Chapter 262. Everyone walked to the stone table helplessly and gathered together to discuss countermeasures. Feng Min looked at Yun Yao and asked in a low voice, "Senior Sister Yun Yao, we have searched the entire demon cave but couldn't find the high priestess and the witch. What should we do next?" Wu Yu clenched his fists angrily and cursed, "Damn the high priestess and the witch. They must have escaped long ago. It's a pity that we couldn't kill them." Yun Yao frowned and thought for a moment. Then, she said in a low voice, "Junior Sister Feng Min, Junior Brother Wu Yu, the High Priestess and the Witch must have escaped from other exits. They have demonic secret treasures to protect them. Even if we find them, we can't kill them. Since they have escaped, let's end this operation here." Feng Min and Wu Yu were a little unwilling, but they also knew that Yun Yao's words were reasonable, so they could only give up. Yun Yao looked at them and said seriously, "Junior Sister Feng Min, Junior Brother Wu Yu, you two should leave the demon cave as soon as possible and return to our base to take care of the injured disciples." Feng Min asked doubtfully, "Senior Sister Yun Yao, what about the three of you? Don't you want to leave the demon cave with us?" Yun Yao shook her head gently and said in a low voice, "The demon guards have been annihilated. The High Priestess and the Witch have escaped. We still have to completely destroy this demon cave before this operation can be considered complete." Feng Min and Wu Yu nodded in agreement. The two didn't waste any more time. They bid farewell to Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing and left the secret room and the demon cave. Only Yun Yao, Ji Tianqing, and Hao Meng were left in the dark secret room. Yun Yao looked around and said in a low voice, "Junior Brother Hao, Junior Brother Ji, this secret room is the core of the demon cave. Maybe there are some secrets and clues hidden here. Let's look carefully." Ji Tianqing and Hao Meng also understood this point. They immediately began to carefully search every corner and the secret compartments on the walls. About an hour later, the three of them searched through the secret room and found a large pile of scattered items. The three of them piled these things on the ground in the middle of the secret room and piled them up into a small hill. In the messy hill, there were dozens of books of secret techniques and more than a dozen thick ancient books. There were also some turtle shells engraved with words, as well as fragments of Xian weapons, compasses, and medicinal materials. In addition, Hao Meng also found a few strings of grayish-white chain beads. After careful observation, he discovered that the white bone chains were actually made of human bones. After the search was over, the three of them surrounded the hill and frowned as they observed and identified it. After roughly sizing up the pile of items, the three of them revealed disappointed expressions. These things might be useful to the demon race, but not to the human race. Those dozens of secret manuals and ancient books were all written in the demon clan's language, so the three of them couldn't understand them. But even so, Yun Yao would not let go of any clues that might appear. She said in a deep voice, "Let's check these things. Maybe we will find something." Hao Meng nodded. He flipped through the ancient books with her, trying his best to identify the contents of the books. Ji Tianqing casually flipped through a few ancient books. When he saw the densely packed Xian words, he felt dizzy and lost interest in continuing to flip through them. He continued to search the secret room. He walked around the corner and gently tapped on the wall, looking for a secret compartment hidden in the wall. Not long after, he found a secret compartment. He managed to open the secret compartment and found a black book inside. Originally, he did not care about this book. He thought that the book was written in Xian words that he could not understand. But when he casually flipped through 2 pages, he was surprised to find that the words in this book were written in human words. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. He was full of doubts as he thought to himself, "This secret room is the most confidential place in the Xian cave. How could a human's ancient book appear here? And it was hidden so well by the high priest." He hurriedly flipped through the book and quickly glanced at the contents of the book. Suddenly, he saw the 2 words Kenshin in the book. His pupils shrank as he carefully flipped through the book. He saw that the book wrote, Kenshin's name spread throughout the continent, causing the three imperial courts to be wary of him. Every race retreated when they heard his name. In the year of Gingqian, in the month of Gingqian, Kenshin stepped into the Tianqian region. In a secret realm in this region, he defeated an emperor realm expert with a single sword strike. His name spread far and wide, causing the people of this region to bow down and worship him. Kenshin stayed in the Tianqian region for 10 days. His whereabouts were unknown, and the reason was unknown. A few years later, news spread from the Tianqian region. A person with great fortune received guidance from Kenshin and achieved great success. Kenshin left behind a heavenly star bead in the ancient realm. It is a shocking treasure that can reach the immortal realm. However, the heavenly star bead has never appeared in the world. It is hard to tell if this news is true or false. Perhaps it is just a rumor. Ji Tianqing carefully flipped through the book and read all the contents related to Kenshin. This book was thin to begin with, and the last few pages had been torn off by someone. He had just seen the news about the heavenly star bead, but there was no more content. He was instantly filled with anxiety and doubt. However, in the last few pages of the book, there was a yellowed page with a painting of a mountain shrouded in fog. Ji Tianqing took a closer look and could only see that the painting was of a mountain and a forest shrouded in thick fog. Other than that, there were no words or markings in the painting, and he could not see any clues. He closed the book and thought to himself, for nearly 100 years, the demon race has also been searching for the heavenly star bead. The contents recorded in this book are related to Kenshin and the heavenly star bead. It seems to contain clues about the heavenly star bead. No wonder there are books of the human race here, and they were even carefully preserved by the high priest. Thinking of this, he secretly glanced at Yun Yao and Hao Meng. Seeing that the two of them were focused on flipping through the ancient book, he quietly put the black book into his spatial ring. Then, he walked to the stone table as if nothing had happened and helped the two of them count the items and look for clues. 2 hours passed quickly. The three of them checked everything, but they didn't find any valuable clues. The only clue that might be useful was the dozens of ancient books. Unfortunately, the three of them could not understand the demon race's language in the ancient books, so they could only bring them back to the Sky Pillar sect and let the sect deal with them. Yun Yao opened her interspatial ring and put all the things on the stone table into her interspatial ring. Junior brother Ji, junior brother Hao, I want to bring these things back to the sect and report to Master. We have already searched the demon cave. Now it is time to destroy this evil demon cave. Hao Meng nodded and grinned. Don't worry, senior sister. I have already prepared. I have completed many sect missions in the past few years. The sect master and the elders have rewarded me with a few explosive talismans. I have been keeping them and could not bear to use them. Today, they can finally be put to use. Chapter 263. After saying that, Hao Meng took out 7 crimson talismans from his interspatial ring. Each talisman was 1 foot long and as wide as a palm. They were crimson red and emitted extremely violent primordial chi waves. Ji Tianqing could clearly sense that these talismans were of a very high grade, and the power they contained was extremely terrifying. If the 7 explosive talismans were to explode at the same time, they could even destroy half a mountain. Yun Yao looked at the explosive talismans in Hao Meng's hand and nodded. Junior brother Hao's idea is not bad. Hao Meng smiled and continued, these explosive talismans are black-grade high-grade talismans. Only a talisman master can refine them. As long as one of these talismans is detonated, it can kill anyone below the primordial core realm. It can also destroy the mountain rocks within a radius of dozens of meters. Although this demon cave is deep underground and the walls are all hard rocks, there are many tunnels and tunnels in the cave. However, the demonic cavern is connected in all directions. Countless caverns and tunnels have been excavated. The foundation is not stable. As long as we use these explosive talismans appropriately, we can definitely destroy the demon cave completely. There were many secret rooms and tunnels in the demon cave, and the terrain seemed complicated. In fact, the core of the entire demon cave was the empty cave with a radius of 1,000 meters. There were 6 stone doors around the cave, extending into many tunnels and creating many secret rooms. As long as the core cave was destroyed, the entire demon cave would collapse and be completely destroyed. After making up their minds, Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Hao Meng left the secret room and returned to the empty cave. Hao Meng walked around the cave and carefully observed for a while before he found a suitable place to place the explosive talismans. It took him half an hour to place the 7 explosive talismans around the cave. After everything was ready, he quickly walked back to Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and said with a serious expression, "Eldest senior sister, junior brother Ji, let's leave quickly. I've already adjusted the formation in the explosive talismans. After 15 minutes, the 7 explosive talismans will all explode." When Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing heard him, they immediately entered the dark tunnel and ran out of the demon cave. The 3 of them passed through the pitch-black tunnel at an extremely fast speed. In less than a quarter of an hour, they had left the demonic cave. The 3 of them returned to the forest outside the cave and silently observed the entrance of the devil's cave. After about 100 breaths of time, the explosive talisman exploded. Boom! A loud and muffled sound suddenly came from underground. The earth was shaking violently, and the entire mountain was trembling as if there was a super earthquake. The ground shook violently for more than 10 times, cracking open one huge gully after another. Many trees were shaking and swaying, and countless trees were broken, letting out cracking noises. For a moment, the entire mountain was shaking as if it was about to collapse. Dust, mud, and wood fragments were stirred up from the mountain, drifting down from the sky. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were already prepared. Even though the ground was shaking violently, they did not fall to the ground. After a long time, the earth-quaking mountains shaking slowly slowed down and gradually calmed down. At this moment, the entire mountain peak was distorted and deformed. The peak of the mountain had caved in a few hundred meters deep, and it was shorter than before. After the demonic cave was destroyed, the interior of the mountain peak was hollow, causing the mountain peak to sink and fill up the hollow area. Even though the 3 of them could not see the situation inside the mountain peak, they could guess that the entire demonic cave must have been destroyed. Phew! We have finally completed our mission. Hao Meng let out a long breath, and a gratified smile appeared on his face. We have completely destroyed the demonic cave and killed so many demon guards. The demons will definitely not come out to stir up trouble in the near future. Ji Tianqing also nodded and said with a smile, "Yes. The Star Ancient Realm will be peaceful for a while. I only hope that the High Priestess and the Witch will escape from the Star Ancient Realm after this and never come back." Yun Yao looked calm and did not say anything. However, everyone knew that with the High Priestess and the Witch's temperament, they would definitely not leave the Star Ancient Realm easily. Perhaps, it wouldn't be long before they made a comeback. After a long time, the dust, wood, and grass that filled the sky finally dissipated, and the night sky became clear again. Yun Yao said in a low voice, "Junior brother Hao, junior brother Ji, we should go back and report." Hao Meng nodded and was about to leave with her. However, Ji Tianqing hesitated for a moment and did not follow. Yun Yao turned to look at him and asked curiously, "Junior brother Ji, why are you not going?" Ji Tianqing smiled apologetically and explained, "Senior sister, I still have a very important matter to attend to, so I won't be returning to the sect with you." Yun Yao frowned slightly, but did not ask any further. Hao Meng raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, "Junior brother Ji, where are you going? How long will it take for you to return?" Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said solemnly, "That matter is very important and troublesome. It might take 10 days to half a month, or even a month. But don't worry, no matter what, I will return to the sect before the heaven ranking tournament next month." Since he did not want to reveal the details, Yun Yao and Hao Meng did not pursue the matter. In that case, be careful on your way back. Junior brother Ji, be careful. The two of them warned Ji Tianxing, then waved goodbye to him, turned around, and left. Ji Tianxing watched Yun Yao and Hao Meng's departing figures for a long time before he turned and walked in another direction. After leaving the mountain where the Devil Cave was located, he released Xianyu from the 100 treasures brocade pouch. Swoosh! Xianyu turned into a ray of icy blue light and appeared in front of him, its body rapidly expanding. In the blink of an eye, its body grew to more than 3 meters, and it became a handsome and majestic ice fox. Especially its 12 furry tails, it looked both mysterious and beautiful. Old Ji, where are you going instead of returning to the sect with senior sister? Ji Tianxing reached out and touched its head, his lips curling into a meaningful smile. I just found a clue about the heavenly star bead in the secret chamber of the Devil Cave. I have to investigate it as soon as possible. Currently, he was cultivating the 4th level of the Path of the Sword. The sword spirit in the burial of heaven had said that with his mortal body, he could only reach the 4th level and could not cultivate the 5th level of the Path of the Heart. This meant that he could only stay in the mystic enlightening realm and was destined to never reach the origin core realm. To solve this problem, he could only try his best to find the heavenly star bead and merge it with the Kenshin blood. Although Qianyu did not know what the heavenly star bead was, it knew that it was extremely important to him. It nodded and asked, "Where are you going to start your investigation?" Chapter 264. A long time ago, Xian had told Ji Tianxing about the situation in the ancient realm of stars. She had mentioned Flame Spirit City and introduced it to him in detail. Flame Spirit City was the only city in the ancient realm of stars. This ancient city, which had existed for almost 1,000 years, was located in the central region of the ancient realm. It was only 500 miles away from the stellar peak. Flame Spirit City was not big. It only covered an area of 100 miles, and only a few 100,000 people lived in it. However, these people were all martial artists. Many of them were martial arts experts, and there were even a few experts living in seclusion. Almost half of the people living in the city were the descendants of the natives of the ancient realm. Their ancestors had lived in the ancient realm for generations. Most of them were inextricably linked to the 8 great sections. Many of them were the descendants of the disciples of the 8 great sections. They lived and prospered in Flame Spirit City. That was how the city had developed to its current scale. Although Flame Spirit City was small, it was very prosperous. Hundreds of thousands of martial artists gathered in this city. Naturally, it was also a gathering place for information about the ancient realm of stars. The disciples of the 8 great sects would often go to Flame Spirit City when they went out to train. They would ask for information in the city or by some cultivation resources. Ji Tianxing guessed that the mountain peak painting was a clue about the heavenly star pearl. However, he could not see the secret hidden in the painting. He could only go to Flame Spirit City and find a way to investigate this matter. Xianyu had never heard of Flame Spirit City. It immediately asked Ji Tianxing curiously. "Let's talk as we go." Ji Tianxing smiled and jumped onto its back. Xianyu quickly flapped its wings and flew into the sky, heading north at a moderate speed. During the journey, Ji Tianxing introduced the situation in Flame Spirit City to it. After hearing this, Xianyu was naturally excited and eager. It just wanted to enter the city as soon as possible. In a mountain range 500 miles away from the Demon Cave, on the peak of a towering mountain. Under the pitch-black night sky, 2 tall figures stood on a huge rock at the peak of the mountain, looking in the direction of the Demon Cave. One of them was a 2-meter-tall black-robed elder with bare feet. He was the high priest. The woman beside him, who was wearing black leather armor and was covered in blood, was the Blood Moon Infanta. Their expressions were extremely gloomy and cold. Their eyes contained monstrous anger and killing intent. Damned Sky Pillar Sect. He actually slaughtered so many of our warriors and even destroyed the devil cave that we had lived in for so many years. The Blood Moon Infanta growled angrily. Her voice was hoarse and trembling, and it was filled with killing intent. The High Priest's voice was cold as he said in a low voice, "It's not just the Sky Pillar sect. There's also the Heart Moon sect, the Six Unity sect, and the Pill Cauldron sect. Sooner or later, I will make them pay with their blood, and pay them back tenfold." The Blood Moon Infanta secretly clenched her fists and asked in a low voice, "High Priestess, we left in a hurry. There are still many important things in the Devil's Cave that we didn't have time to take away." Before she could finish, the High Priest shook his head and said, "Don't worry about it. The demonic cave has been destroyed. We won't be able to find it even if we go back." The Blood Moon Infanta was unwilling to give up. She frowned and asked, "The Devil's Cave has been destroyed, and only the two of us have escaped. We have nowhere to hide. Don't tell me that we have to leave the ancient realm and return to the tribe." The High Priest shook his head again and said in an indifferent tone, "We have suffered such huge losses and fallen into such a sorry state. If we return to the tribe, how will we explain it to Lord Demon King? Then what should we do? Where can we go?" The Blood Moon Infanta looked at him and asked in a low voice. The High Priest pondered for a moment and had an idea. He said in a low voice, "I know an excellent place for us to hide. We won't be discovered by the Sky Pillar sect." Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. It was early in the morning, and a wisp of white appeared on the horizon. Qian Yu arrived at Spirit Flame City and landed on a vast plain. This plain was at least 100 miles in radius. Looking around, one could only see boundless grass and forests. Qian Yu looked around and asked Ji Tianqing in confusion, "Old Ji, didn't you say that we have arrived? Where is Spirit Flame City?" Ji Tianqing pointed at the grassland under his feet and said with a smile, "This is Spirit Flame City. However, the city is protected by a great formation, so ordinary people can't see it." Qian Yu suddenly understood and said with a smile, "No wonder I felt that the plain was strange. There was a faint aura of a formation." Ji Tianqing walked into the depths of the plain and looked around with keen eyes. When he walked 100 steps away, he saw a black stone tablet that was half the height of a man hidden in a cluster of tall grass. The words, "Spirit Flame City," were written in silver on the tablet. There were also formation patterns and symbols carved on it. He stared at the tablet and observed it for a while before revealing a smile. "Qian Yu, if you want to go to the city with me, you'd better shrink a little." "Okay." Qian Yu nodded in response and quickly shrank. In the blink of an eye, it returned to the size of a kitten and jumped onto Ji Tianqing's shoulder to squat. Ji Tianqing then took out the Atlas badge and placed it on the black tablet, silently injecting his true core into it. The black tablet lit up with a silver light and emitted a strong aura of a formation. The great formation of Spirit Flame City was activated, and the scene before Ji Tianqing changed. There was nothing in front of him at first, as if it was blocked by an invisible barrier. Swoosh! After the great formation was activated, the invisible barrier immediately dissipated, revealing the real scene before his eyes. The vast grassland and forest were all illusions created by the great formation. After the illusion disappeared, an ancient black city appeared before Ji Tianqing out of thin air. This was an ancient square city. The city walls were made of huge black stones and were about 10 meters tall. They emitted a majestic and heavy aura. The huge black stones were extremely hard and had been etched by thousands of years of wind and frost. However, there were still mottled and rough marks left behind. The wide and tall city gates were tightly shut, and the words, "Spirit Flame City," were carved on the lintel. The words were already blurred. Ji Tianqing still stood beside the stone tablet, but a wide black stone path appeared beneath his feet. It led straight ahead and connected to the tall city gates. Qian Yu was still looking up curiously at Spirit Flame City, but Ji Tianqing had already walked toward the city gates. The city gates were empty, and there was not a single person in sight. When Ji Tianqing arrived at the city gates, two middle-aged martial artists in armor walked out from the tower on the city walls. These two men were the guards of the city gates, and they were both at the second level of the mystic enlightening realm. The two of them stood on the city walls and looked down at Ji Tianqing. They asked in a dignified voice, "Those who are not of the ancient star realm are not allowed to enter Spirit Flame City. Show me your identity token." Ji Tianqing knew the rules of Spirit Flame City. Only the disciples of the 8 great sects and the residents of the city were allowed to enter. The disciples of the 8 great sects all had identity tokens. The residents of Spirit Flame City naturally had identity tokens as well. Chapter 265. Ji Tianqing took out the Atlas badge and showed it to the two guards. The two of them asked him a few questions before opening the city gates. The 5-meter-tall black city gate slowly opened with a muffled creak 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 sound. Ji Tianqing stepped through the city gates and entered Spirit Flame City for the first time. As soon as he entered the city, he saw a straight and wide road that led straight to the center of the city. Spirit Flame City followed the layout of human cities 1,000 years ago. The city was squarish and the roads in the city were straight. The roads of different sizes crisscrossed and were easy to identify. Even if it was someone's first time entering the city, as long as they were not too stupid, they would not get lost. Ji Tianqing walked on the main road and looked around curiously. On both sides of the main road were rows upon rows of houses and buildings. Most of them were 2 to 3 story shops that sold elixirs, weapons and equipment, talisman materials, and even demon beasts and spirit beasts. Ji Tianqing strolled around the city for an hour and felt that this ancient city was basically similar to the cities of the mortal world. However, the people living in the city were all martial artists. The trades and professions in the city were also closely related to martial arts. Moreover, on both sides of every main road in Spirit Flame City, there were statues of human powerhouses. Those statues were more than 5 meters tall and the carvings were lifelike. The people carved were also of different shapes and sizes. There were white-haired old men, stalwart middle-aged men, and benevolent old women. Ji Tianqing knew that these ancient statues were of the ancestors of Spirit Flame City and the 8 sections. They were all powerhouses who dominated the region. Apart from that, there were also many large relief sculptures on the walls of some palaces and tall buildings. The people and scenery on the relief sculptures were all very lifelike. They depicted legends and stories of powerhouses slaying demons and devils, traveling through clouds and rain, and bestowing kindness to the people of the world. When Ji Tianqing passed by those relief sculptures, he would stop and look at them for a while. It was early in the morning and the entire Spirit Flame City was still in a deep sleep. The main road was cold and cheerless. Many of the shops on both sides had yet to open. Ji Tianqing walked along the main road into the city. He was also thinking about where he should go to ask for information. News and legends about the heavenly star bead were widely spread in the ancient realm of stars. Many great forces and experts had heard of this legend. Once news of the heavenly star bead appeared, it would definitely attract the attention of various forces and experts. Therefore, he would never reveal anything related to the heavenly star bead. He just wanted to find a place to inquire about the secret of the painting. As the sun slowly rose, the sleeping flame Spirit City gradually woke up. The shops on both sides of the street opened their doors one after another. Many martial artists and commoners walked onto the streets. The city gradually became lively. The cries of peddlers and the laughter of martial artists could be heard everywhere. Ji Tianqing was still strolling leisurely in the city, silently observing the situation. Unknowingly, half a day had passed. In the afternoon, after many inquiries, he finally had a plan in his heart and rushed to the Octagon restaurant in the city. The Octagon restaurant was a force that specialized in selling and trading all kinds of information. Its name meant to be observant and alert. If he wanted to inquire about any information in the ancient realm of stars, it was definitely the right choice to go to the Octagon restaurant. Ji Tianqing followed the directions of the passers-by and quickly found the Octagon restaurant at the end of a quiet street. This was an octagonal pagoda that was 20 meters tall. It occupied a large area and had a magnificent aura. The entire pagoda was dark gold in color. Under the reflection of the setting sun, it emitted specks of golden light. The 8 corners of the pagoda were engraved with the statues of 8 spirit beasts. These spirit beasts were all rare and mysterious beasts. Ji Tianqing stood on the street outside the pagoda and looked up for a while. During this time, he saw a few martial artists entering and leaving the Octagon restaurant. Those who went in had a serious or anxious expression, while those who came out had a rosy complexion and were in high spirits. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing smiled and stepped through the door of the Octagon restaurant. After stepping through the door, there was a spacious and bright hall. On the left side of the hall was a tall counter. Behind the counter sat a middle-aged scholar wearing a square scarf hat and a goatee. 2 martial artists who had just entered stood in front of the counter and asked the middle-aged scholar something. The middle-aged scholar looked indifferent. He gently waved the goose feather fan in his hand and slowly explained something. Ji Tianqing walked towards the counter. When he was 5 meters away from the counter, he was stopped by a middle-aged man in black. This middle-aged man was the manager of the Octagon restaurant. With a dignified expression, he said, "Is this your first time in our Octagon restaurant? Don't you know the rules of our Octagon restaurant? When Mr. Yen is talking to a guest, no one is allowed to come near." Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. He quickly cupped his hands and explained with an apologetic expression, "I'm sorry, it's my first time here. I hope you can forgive me for my rudeness." The middle-aged man nodded and didn't say anything else. He turned around and left. Ji Tianqing waited in the corner of the hall for a moment. After the 2 martial artists left, he walked to the counter. The middle-aged scholar, Mr. Yen, nodded slightly at him and asked slowly, "Little brother, what information do you want to ask?" Ji Tianqing didn't waste any time. He quickly took out the mountain painting and a few spirit stones from the black book and placed them on the counter. "Mr. Yen, may I ask where this place is depicted in the painting?" Mr. Yen raised his eyebrows and stared at the painting for a moment. He then raised his head and looked at Ji Tianqing carefully. He waved the goose feather fan and said in a serious tone, "Little brother, the place depicted in the painting is a famous dangerous place in the ancient realm, the Hidden Fog Mountain Range. The Hidden Fog Mountain Range is extremely dangerous. There are powerful demonic beasts and ferocious beasts entrenched there. There are also all kinds of snakes, insects, poisonous ants, and unexpected dangers. In addition, this area is shrouded in fog for many years. Even if you look down from the sky, you won't be able to see the situation in the mountain range. The fog is very strange, and it can even block the detection of spiritual sense. Many martial artists have entered the Hidden Fog Mountain Range, but most of them died. If you don't have a detailed map of the Hidden Fog Mountain Range, you will lose your way in the mountain range and never be able to walk out. Since 100 years ago, the name of this dangerous place has become more and more famous. Now, almost no one dares to enter it. Hidden Fog Mountain Range. Ji Tianqing muttered the name in his heart. He remembered Mr. Yan's words. He frowned and thought for a moment before he asked again, "Mr. Yan, where can I get a map of the Hidden Fog Mountain Range?" Mr. Yan frowned and thought for a moment before he said in a serious tone, "You can go to the market in the eastern part of the city and look for the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. In the entire Spirit Flame City, only he has a map of the Hidden Fog Mountain Range. If even he doesn't have it, then no one else has it." Ji Tianqing nodded and thanked Mr. Yen before he turned to leave. However, Mr. Yen smiled and added, "However, not everyone can meet the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Casino." Chapter 266. Ji Tianqing was taken aback by Mr. Yan's words. Going to the Sky Eagle Casino to settle a matter. Is it a gamble? Mr. Yen smiled faintly, appearing somewhat enigmatic. It's a gamble, but it's not what you think. It's a wager. Ji Tianqing nodded and asked, Mr. Yen, what kind of wager is it? Mr. Yen explained slowly, the Heavenly Eagle Casino has both the money gambling on the surface and the Beast King Casino in the dark. In the Beast King Casino, there are two invincible ring masters. They are both powerful demons. You have to challenge one of the ring masters and defeat him before you can meet the owner of the Sky Eagle Casino. The owner will also fulfill one of your requests. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and smiled with interest. Oh. There's such a rule. Mr. Yen, please enlighten me. How are the two ring masters? What are the rules of the challenge? Mr. Yen continued to explain, the first ring master is called Violent Bear. He's at LV5 True Energy Realm and is from the Bear Clan. Only martial artists below LV5 True Energy Realm can challenge him. The second ring master is called an Ing. He's at LV5 Common Mystic Realm and is from the Wolf Clan. Only martial artists below LV5 Common Mystic Realm can challenge him. The rules of the challenge are simple. Both parties must fight with their bare hands and are not allowed to rely on external forces such as mystic weapons and talismans. Both parties are responsible for their own deaths. Ji Tianqing frowned when he heard this. A solemn look flashed across his eyes. He knew that demons were born with extraordinary combat strength that far surpassed human martial artists of the same level. A LV5 Common Mystic Realm demon expert's combat strength was comparable to a human LV6 or 7 Common Mystic Realm expert. If a human martial artist did not rely on external forces such as mystic weapons and talismans, he would not be a match for the demon. He looked at Mr. Yen and asked with a frown, if that's the case, isn't the rule set by the owner of the Sky Eagle Casino very difficult? Very few people can complete it. Mr. Yen nodded with a smile. Of course. In the past year, at least a dozen people have challenged him, but only one person has completed the challenge and met the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop as he wished. The owner of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop is a mysterious expert. He also controls the market in the eastern part of the city and is one of the 3 overlords of Flame Spirit City. How can an ordinary person meet him? Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. He cupped his hands at Mr. Yen and said, Thank you, Mr. Yen, for answering my questions in such detail. Mr. Yen waved his sleeve and collected the spirit stones on the counter. He smiled and said, You don't have to thank me, little brother. Octagon Inn has always done things for money. We don't cheat anyone. No matter how much you pay, you will be able to obtain the corresponding information. Go ahead. Good luck. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything more. He turned around and walked out of the hall. After leaving the Octagon Inn, he directly rushed to the Eastern Market to look for the Heavenly Eagle Casino. The sun was about to set, and the entire Flame Spirit City was bathed in a golden sunset. The number of pedestrians in the city gradually decreased, and the cries of the peddlers gradually disappeared. However, the Eastern Market was different. It was as quiet and mysterious as ever. There were 2 main streets in the market. Both sides of the streets were lined with rows upon rows of shops. They all sold weapons, equipment, elixirs, talismans, and related materials. This was the world of martial artists. Everything related to martial artists could be found here. Although there were shops in other parts of the city that sold these things, the quality of those things was far inferior to those in the market. The ancient martial art practitioners of Flame Spirit City usually bought things related to cultivation from the market. Of course, the gold and silver treasures of the secular world were useless in the market. They couldn't buy anything good. In the market, only spirit stones and gemstones could be used as currency. Martial artists who didn't have spirit stones or gemstones could only barter for items of equal value. Ji Tianqing walked along the left main street of the market. When he reached the end, he saw the magnificent Heavenly Eagle Casino. Although it was called a casino, it was actually a majestic palace that occupied an area of 1,000 meters. The interior and exterior of the palace were decorated in a grand and luxurious manner. At the entrance of the palace stood a heavenly eagle statue that was dozens of meters tall. The heavenly eagle statue was lifelike and extraordinary. It made a posture of spreading its wings and flying high in the sky. It was extremely shocking. 2 rows of black armored guards stood on both sides of the entrance. They were all at True Energy Realm 7th level. Their eyes were bright, and their auras were sharp. It was currently evening. There weren't many people in the casino, so it was relatively quiet. The casino's business was at its best after nightfall. It was the liveliest time. Ji Tianqing stepped through the entrance and entered the main hall of the casino. Before he could see the situation in the main hall clearly, a middle-aged man in black clothes walked over and greeted him with a smile. "Brother, if you want to gamble, please take a seat for a while. If you have other matters, feel free to tell me. My surname is Tian, and I'm the manager of the Heavenly Eagle Casino." Ji Tianqing nodded at him and said calmly, "Manager Tian, I came to the Heavenly Eagle Casino to seek an audience with the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Casino." "Oh. Seek an audience with our casino owner?" Manager Tian raised his eyebrows, and the smile on his face became somewhat playful. "If you wish to seek an audience with our casino owner, you must first complete a challenge. Little brother, do you know the rules of this matter?" Ji Tianqing nodded again and said, "Of course, I know. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come here so hastily." It's good that you understand." Manager Tian's smile grew wider. He extended his hand and gestured for him to enter. "Little brother, please follow me." Then, Manager Tian led Ji Tianqing to the corner of the main hall and entered through a black stone door. Behind the stone door was a dark tunnel that extended deep into the ground. Stone lamps lined both sides of the tunnel, and the ground was neat and flat. It was obvious that people came and went often. After a while, Manager Tian led Ji Tianqing to the end of the tunnel and entered a huge and spacious hall. The circular hall with a radius of 300 meters looked a little like an auction house. The hall was surrounded by high terrains, and it was filled with seats. It could accommodate at least 1,000 people. In the middle of the hall was a circular open space with a radius of 100 meters. It was like a flat pit. However, Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that it was the so-called challenge ring, which was also the arena. In a while, he would be challenging the werewolf of the demon clan named Aning in the arena. There would be many people watching the challenge from the seats around the arena and the private rooms on the second floor of the main hall. Manager Tian led Ji Tianqing through a few rows of seats and entered the arena. Ji Tianqing saw that there were 2 huge black iron doors on the north and south sides of the arena. Through the bars of the iron doors, he could see that there was a secret room inside. Chapter 267. In the dark secret room, only 2 stone lamps were lit with a dim yellow light. There were a few cracks on the stone floor of the secret room, as well as many broken holes and huge claw marks. Ji Tianqing could tell that these were the marks of the demon race or demon beasts. There was no doubt that the demon race and demon beasts who were going to participate in the arena were locked up here before entering the arena. He sat on a stone bench in the corner and muttered with a gloomy expression, "Damn bastard, he actually locked me up here like a demon beast. This should be the Beast King Casino. It seems that demon-beast duels are often held here, attracting many people to watch or gamble." Thinking of this, he raised his head and looked at the black iron door opposite him. He didn't need to guess to know that the shadow wolf he was going to challenge tonight was locked up in the secret room behind the black iron door. Ji Tianqing had read about the demon race in ancient books before. The demon race wasn't a demon beast, but a special race between humans and demons. They looked like humans, but had the characteristics of demons. It was said that the demon race's physical strength and defense were as strong as a demon beast's. Not only were their reactions quick, but they were also very resistant to attacks. If an ordinary martial artist didn't have a profound weapon, they wouldn't be able to injure a demon of the same realm. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and a playful smile appeared on his lips. A 5th level profound comprehension realm shadow wolf must have great strength and speed. An ordinary profound comprehension realm martial artist wouldn't be able to injure it if they fought barehanded. Fortunately, I'm different from ordinary martial artists. Without a profound weapon, I can unleash even greater combat strength. The secret room was silent as time passed by. Not long after, there were some noises and the sound of people talking. As time passed, the sound of footsteps and voices became more and more frequent. Obviously, many people were entering the arena and sitting on the spectator stands as they whispered to each other. Ji Tianqing listened attentively for a while and understood the whole story. It turned out that after Deacon Tian locked him in the secret room, he sent people to spread the news that someone was going to challenge the Shadow Wolf tonight. Many martial artists rushed to the Heavenly Eagle gambling house to watch the battle when they heard the news. Some were even prepared to place their bets. As more and more spectators poured into the arena, the noise in the arena became louder and louder. It became very lively. Ji Tianqing silently listened to the sounds coming from all around. He heard several young martial artists gathered together in the stands about 20 meters away from him, discussing something. Hee, the Beast King Casino only opens once every 10 days. Today is only the 6th day, and it actually opened again. What's so interesting about those previous fights? Every time, it's just two demon beasts fighting each other. Even Violent Bear and Shadow are not participating. How boring. Yes. Tonight's battle was still more exciting. There's another reckless fellow who wants to challenge Werewolf Shadow. I remember that it's been half a year since anyone dared to challenge Shadow, right? Yes. The last time someone challenged an Ing, I saw it with my own eyes. That fellow seems to be an inner disciple of the true martial sect. His strength is at the 5th level of the Tongxian stage. He was quite confident before he went up the stage. Young Master Lu, what was the result? Did that kid succeed in his challenge? How could he have succeeded? Are you dreaming? That kid's outcome was even more tragic than those previous challengers. He was torn to pieces by Werewolf Shadow on the spot. Hearing this, the young martial artists exclaimed in surprise and excitement. After a while, the young martial artists calmed down and continued their discussion. Young Master Lu, since the previous challenger was a true martial sect disciple and was torn to pieces by Werewolf Shadow, won't the true martial sect pursue the matter? Pursue the matter my ass. The true martial sect's people knew about this and came to collect that kid's corpse. However, they can't do anything to the Heavenly Eagle Casino. That kid initiated the challenge voluntarily. He knew the rules before he went up the stage. He was responsible for his own life and death. The true martial sect is unreasonable. How can they pursue the matter with the Heavenly Eagle Casino? Tisk tsk, since that's the case, I'm afraid tonight's challenger will be miserable. He'll probably die without a complete corpse, right? Yes, Werewolf Shadow hasn't appeared for half a year. He must have gone crazy from holding back and only wants to kill, right? Let me remind you guys first. If you see the challenger being torn to pieces by Werewolf Shadow later, don't make a fuss. Don't be like country bumpkins who haven't seen the world. Several young warriors quickly nodded in agreement, flattering young Master Lu one after another. Ji Tianqing, who was in the secret chamber, heard the young martial artist's words clearly. His face immediately turned gloomy, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. It seems that Werewolf Shadow's combat power and bloodthirstiness have exceeded my expectations. I have to be careful. Although he only understood now how cruel the rules of the Beast King Casino were. However, he didn't regret coming to the Beast King Casino to participate in the gambling fight. When he decided to investigate the hidden fog mountain and clues about the heavenly star bead, he was mentally prepared to deal with all kinds of dangers. To him, tonight's gambling fight was just the first test in finding clues about the heavenly star bead. Finally, 2 hours passed. It was already night time, and it was time to light the lamps. The Heavenly Eagle Casino was at its most lively time. The spectator stands around the arena were already filled with spectators who came to watch the fight. Even the private rooms on the second floor of the hall were basically occupied by some distinguished guests. The thousands of people around the arena were discussing excitedly, looking forward to the start of the fight. At this moment, a tall and sturdy old man in a long black robe walked into the arena with 4 men in tight robes. The old man was tall and strong, and his hair and beard were gray. He exuded a powerful and majestic aura, and his eyes swept across the arena like lightning. The 4 men in mystic comprehending realm stood behind the old man as straight as javelins, exuding a sharp aura. The thousands of people in the spectator stands immediately quietened down, and their eyes were focused on the burly old man. Many people knew this old man. His surname was Lei, and he was the chief steward of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. He was also the right-hand man of the mysterious owner. Seeing that the arena had quietened down, Steward Lei announced loudly, "I'm Lei Qianjun. Thank you all for coming. Tonight, our workshop will bring you another exciting duel. A young man at level 3 Mystic Comprehending Realm would like to meet our owner and challenge Werewolf and Ing." When his voice reverberated throughout the arena, the thousands of people were immediately stirred up and began to discuss. Lei Qianjun continued expressionlessly, "Who is this young man? What extraordinary abilities does he have? Werewolf and Ing hasn't appeared for half a year. How will he perform? Let's wait and see. From now on, you may place your bets." Chapter 268. Lei Qianjun's words stirred the blood of nearly 1,000 people in the arena. Almost as soon as he finished speaking, countless people placed their bets. The dozen or so managers of the Heavenly Eagle Casino were scattered around the spectator stands and were immediately surrounded by the crowd. After half an hour, nearly 80% of the audience had placed their bets. There was no doubt about the result. Almost all of the audience had placed their bets on Werewolf Shadow, betting that he would win. There were a few people who had placed their bets on Ji Tianqing, but the amount of money they had placed was pitifully small. Most of them had placed their bets casually. There were even 2 people who pestered the casino manager, repeatedly claiming that they had placed the wrong bet and wanted to change it to Werewolf Shadow. All in all, nearly 1,000 people in the arena were certain that the outcome of the duel had been decided before it even began. A human youth at level 3 of the Tongxian stage dared to challenge Werewolf Shadow, who was at level 5 of the Tongxian stage. This was no longer a challenge, it was a suicide mission. The previous challenger was a young genius at level 5 of the Tongxian stage, but he had also been torn to pieces by the shadow werewolf. The audience in the arena was discussing the outcome of the youth who had challenged Werewolf Shadow tonight. Would he be torn to pieces? Or would he be turned into a pile of minced meat? The audience was filled with anticipation, their eyes fixed on the arena in the middle of the hall. When the half hour was up, Lei Qianjun announced that the bets would be stopped. The dozen managers left one after another. Then, the 4 men behind Lei Qianjun walked to the north and south sides of the arena and opened the black iron doors. On the south side of the arena, 2 men in black brought Ji Tianqing out of the secret room and stood in the middle of the arena. Countless people in the audience immediately focused their attention on Ji Tianqing. The crowd looked at him condescendingly, revealing mocking and pitiful sneers as they whispered to each other. TSK, a teenager is about to be torn to pieces by a werewolf. What a pity. Sigh. This kid has reached the Tongxian stage at such a young age. He can be considered a young genius. What a pity that he's about to die. Hee hee, I placed a bet of 5 spirit stones. That's all I have. That brat must lose, or else I'll go bankrupt. I also bet 2 million taels of silver. That was all of my family's assets that I tried my best to gather. Don't worry, that kid is dead for sure. Werewolf Shadow will definitely win. In the east corner of the stand sat a middle-aged man in a blue robe. This man had a resolute face and a tall and sturdy figure. He was Ling Yunfei's father, the head of the Ling family, Ling Sihai. More than a month ago, he had secretly left the Green Cloud Imperial City and arrived at the ancient Star Realm. In order to avenge Ling Yunfei, he thought of a way to sneak into Yanling City. He had already stayed in Flame Spirit City for a month, secretly making arrangements and recruiting a few experts. Originally, he had planned to slowly plan in Flame Spirit City and wait for the right opportunity to take revenge on Ji Tianqing. However, he did not expect that he would actually see that familiar figure when he came to the Heavenly Eagle Casino to watch a battle. When he saw Ji Tianqing walk into the arena, he immediately revealed a shocked expression and widened his eyes. Ji Tianqing. It's him. After being stunned for a moment, he regained his senses and the expression on his face immediately changed to one of ecstasy and excitement. Why is he here? Ha ha ha. I've searched high and low for him, only to find him by sheer luck. I didn't expect to meet him here. Ling Sihai was filled with excitement as he roared in his heart. His eyes shone brightly. This is great. I was still thinking of how to kill him. I didn't expect him to court death by challenging Werewolf Shadow, a level 5 mystic comprehending stage martial artist. Ha ha ha, Ji Tianqing, you'll be torn to pieces by Werewolf Shadow soon. I'm really looking forward to it. He sat steadily in his seat and watched the battle with a smile. He was waiting to see Ji Tianqing being torn to pieces and dying without a complete corpse. At the same time, the black iron gate on the north side of the arena opened. 2 men in tight robes pulled a thick iron chain and dragged Werewolf Shadow into the arena. The moment Werewolf Shadow appeared, everyone's gaze gathered on it. Cheers and shouts erupted from the spectator stands. Many people were cheering for Werewolf Shadow, telling him to win and tear Ji Tianqing to pieces. After all, these people had placed a lot of bets on Werewolf Shadow. While the crowd was cheering, Ji Tianqing also stared at Werewolf Shadow, silently sizing it up. This was the first time he saw a werewolf of the demon clan, so he couldn't help but take a few more glances. Werewolf Shadow was nearly 2 meters tall and walked upright like a human with both feet on the ground. Its legs and hands were very thick and strong, and its black nails were as sharp as daggers. Its legs were shackled with black iron shackles and its neck was tied with a thick black iron chain. As it walked, it made a clanking sound. Shadow's entire body was covered with a layer of dark gray hair, which could cover its important parts without wearing clothes. Below its neck, its body looked very similar to a human's, except that it was covered with hair and was thicker. However, its head was a sharp wolf's head, and it had a wide and long wolf's mouth. Its green eyes flickered with a cold light. So this is the werewolf of the demon clan. Ji Tianqing murmured to himself. 2 men in tight robes pulled Werewolf Shadow to the center of the arena. They reached out and untied the iron chain on its neck and legs, allowing it to regain its freedom of movement. It quickly twisted its neck and legs to move its body. Its eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing, revealing a bloodthirsty light. At this moment, Lei Qianjun announced loudly, "The challenge begins now." After he finished speaking, he quickly left the arena with his 4 bodyguards. In the wide and flat arena, only Werewolf Shadow and Ji Tianqing were left, facing each other from 100 steps away. Both of them stared at each other with cold eyes, secretly accumulating their strength, ready to launch a thunderous attack at any time. Ji Tianqing silently channeled the true yuan in his body, causing it to surge faster. It was like a raging river, containing a surging power. Werewolf Shadow slowly bent down, lowering its head and emitting a powerful and cold aura. Seeing its movement, everyone realized that this was the precursor to an attack. It was finally going to attack. Ji Tianqing secretly clenched his fists and stared at it, ready to counterattack at any time. A woo! At this moment, Werewolf Shadow let out a sharp howl. Its body was like an arrow, leaving behind a series of gray shadows, rushing towards Ji Tianqing. Its speed was so fast that no one could see its movements clearly. They only felt that it had turned into a gray shadow. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, it had rushed over 100 steps and arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. It stretched out its thick and strong hands, opened its sharp wolf claws, and ruthlessly clawed at Ji Tianqing's head. The werewolf tribe was indeed ferocious. It wanted to tear apart Ji Tianqing's head and kill him on the spot. Ji Tianqing was already prepared. Although he was surprised by the shadow's speed, he did not panic. He immediately used the shadow step, and with a swoosh, his body flashed 3 meters to the side, narrowly avoiding the shadow's wolf claws. The shadow's attack missed, but its movement did not slow down, and its footsteps did not stop. It twisted its body and pounced to the side, once again stretching out its sharp wolf claws and ruthlessly clawing at Ji Tianqing's head. Chapter 269. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was about to be hit by the wolf's claws, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. What a vicious beast! He cursed in his heart, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. At this critical moment, he did not hesitate to activate 2 sword auras and slashed at the werewolf shadow's 2 front claws. Swish swish! 2 golden sword auras appeared out of thin air and instantly pierced the shadow's front claws, causing 2 muffled sounds. Ji Tianqing was not injured at all, but the 2 golden sword auras were sent flying backward and stabbed into the rocky ground. The werewolf shadow was also shaken to the point that its body was trembling, and its feet took a few big steps back before it could stabilize itself. It looked down at its palms and found that there was a bloody hole in each of its palms, and dark red blood was constantly flowing out. This result stunned it for a moment, and then it immediately let out an incomparably angry howl. The spectators around the stands, seeing that the werewolf shadow was injured by Ji Tianqing, were all shocked and exclaimed in disbelief. No one would have thought that the werewolf shadow would be injured at the beginning of the duel, and both sides had only exchanged 2 moves. In many of the previous duels, the werewolf shadow had also suffered light or heavy injuries. However, its opponent would definitely suffer more severe injuries, and even pay the price with their lives. For a moment, many spectators were stunned. After coming back to their senses, everyone shouted loudly, cheering for the werewolf shadow, encouraging it to fight back and tear Ji Tianqing to pieces. Unfortunately, how could the werewolf shadow understand human language? It ignored the reactions of the spectators around it, and its eyes were gloomy and resentful as it stared at Ji Tianqing, and its mouth let out a furious roar. "You damn bastard! How could you injure me? You're dead. I'm going to twist your head off and smash it bit by bit. I'm going to cut your body into 8 pieces and smash it into a pile of meat paste. Only in this way can I dispel the hatred in my heart." Its tone was full of resentment, but unfortunately, it was speaking the werewolf tribe's language, and no one could understand it. The shadow was completely enraged, and a thick gray fog surged out of its body. Apparently it had activated all of its strength. Swish! Its figure flashed, and turned into a gray shadow, and pounced at Ji Tianqing from the side, waving its front claws to attack again. Ji Tianqing immediately used his shadowless steps. His body twisted strangely a few times, and he dodged Ying's attack and retreated 5 meters back. Swish! The shadow's speed did not decrease, and its figure, and continued to attack Ji Tianqing from the side. Its speed was extremely fast, far surpassing Ji Tianqing's shadowless steps. It was so fast that Ji Tianqing couldn't see its movements clearly. Ji Tianqing's expression suddenly became serious. His eyes were fixed on Ying as he retreated once again. The two of them chased each other in the arena, and an intense and exciting battle unfolded. The spectators around the stands could only see the two of them turning into two blurs, darting left and right, and flashing back and forth. Experts at level 5 of the Tongxian realm could still see the two's movements and tricks. Martial artists below the Tongxian realm could not even see their faces clearly, and all they could see were blurry blurs. Ji Tianqing narrowly dodged 5 attacks in a row. Finally, when Shadow launched its 6th attack, he failed to dodge its sharp claws. Rip! The sound of clothes being torn rang out. The white robe on Ji Tianqing's chest had a few holes, and a few pieces of cloth fell off. The holes in the white robe revealed the dark golden sun soft armor, and there were a few deep claw marks on its surface. Ji Tianqing was not injured, but his expression changed, and his eyes became serious. What a fast speed! This werewolf's attack is very similar to the demon race's movement technique. It can turn into a blur of gray mist. No wonder it's called the Shadow. No, I can't dodge anymore. Even with the protection of the golden sun soft armor, I will be torn apart by the Shadow soon. These thoughts flashed through his mind, and his whole body emitted a strong fighting spirit. He had made up his mind to use his true strength and unique skills to fight the werewolf Shadow head-on. At the same time, the werewolf Shadow turned into a blur of gray mist again, and rushed over as fast as lightning. This time, it did not use its claws to attack Ji Tianqing's head and neck. Instead, it shot out 12 gray mist blades from its palms towards Ji Tianqing. Swish! 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 The 12 gray mist blades were like 12 sharp arrows, shooting towards Ji Tianqing's head, neck, and chest. Ji Tianqing originally thought that it would attack at close range, but he did not expect it to use the human martial artist's attack technique, controlling the sword to attack from a distance. Caught off guard, he almost got hit. Fortunately, he was fast enough and managed to dodge them in time, brushing past the 12 gray mist blades. Ding! 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 The gray mist blades missed and stabbed into the rocky ground, immediately cutting 12 long and narrow gullies in the ground. Despicable and cunning beast, go to hell! Ji Tianqing shouted angrily. He activated 3 golden sword rays, and used his unique skill to attack the Shadow. Thousand Feather Blade. The 3 sword auras immediately split into 9, and with the speed of an aurora, they began to attack from all directions and angles, aiming at the vital points of Ying's body. Swish! 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 The 9 sword rays lit up with dazzling sword rays, creating countless blurs, like a rain of arrows, and shrouding the Shadow. The Shadow's expression changed drastically, and its green eyes showed great shock. Obviously, it had never seen a Tongxian realm human martial artist use such a powerful attack. At the critical moment, it dodged without hesitation, and waved its claws to block the sword rays. Bam! 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 A series of muffled sounds were transmitted to the spectator stands around the arena. After 5 breaths, the 9 sword rays finally dissipated. Only then did the spectators in the spectator stands see the Shadow's appearance clearly. It was still standing in the arena, and had not fallen. But its body was covered with crisscrossing wounds, and dark red blood was gushing out, dyeing its gray fur red. It looked to be in a miserable state, and had completely turned into a bloody wolf. If one looked closely, they would find that its body had been hit by at least 100 sword rays, leaving more than 100 wounds. If it were a normal human martial artist, with such serious injuries, they would have no strength to continue fighting. But the Shadow was a demon, and a werewolf, one of the more vicious and cunning demons. It gritted its teeth and endured its injuries, and it actually let out a shrill howl. It charged at Ji Tianqing even more crazily, and launched a counterattack. Ji Tianqing could clearly see that its green eyes were dyed red with a layer of blood, and it was filled with bloodthirst and madness. The demon race's combat ability is indeed strong. It can still fight after being injured like this. Chapter 270. Gale Lightning Strike. Ji Tianqing stared at an Ing who had turned into a blur and was charging at him. He then performed the second move of the Flying Star Sword technique with all his might. Two golden sword auras that were more than 2 meters long slashed towards the shadow from the left and right. Swish! Swish! In an instant, the two sword rays flew 10 meters away and struck the shadow from both sides. They turned into a golden thunderbolt and struck the shadow. Kaboom! The deafening sound was like a thunderclap, reverberating in the spacious hall. The huge golden thunderbolt scattered the gray shadow on the spot and sent it tumbling backward. It fell to the ground 10 meters away, its life or death unknown. The golden thunderbolt struck the rocky ground, creating a half-meter deep and 2-meter wide crater. Gravel and dust mixed together and splashed in all directions. The ground of the arena shook violently as if an earthquake had occurred. The spectators on the spectator stands widened their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. Their faces were filled with disbelief. The thousands of spectators in the hall did not make a single sound. They were all silent. Everyone was dumbfounded. The thousands of spectators on the spectator stand stared at Ji Tianqing in shock. They could not believe what they had just seen. A young man at the third level of the Tongxian stage could execute such a terrifying sword technique. He could actually injure the fifth level of the Tongxian stage werewolf shadow to such an extent that it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The werewolf shadow's combat ability was comparable to an expert at the 6th or 7th level of the Tongxian stage. How did he do it? This was too unbelievable. While everyone was still in shock, Ji Tianqing had already walked up to Werewolf Shadow's side and looked down at it condescendingly. The werewolf shadow was covered in blood. There was a huge sword wound on its chest that had broken its sternum and extended all the way to its abdomen. White bone stubble could be seen from the wound, and dark red blood gushed out continuously. What surprised Ji Tianqing was that the werewolf shadow did not die on the spot even though it had suffered such a serious injury. It was in a dazed state and was about to pass out. Its body was twitching unconsciously and its claws were scratching the ground desperately. However, it had completely lost its ability to fight and could not even stand up. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing had won, and he had won thoroughly. The thousands of spectators in the stands finally came back to their senses. Everyone let out exclamations and shouts, trying their best to vent the shock and disbelief in their hearts. There were even more people who lost their bets, and because of this, lost their entire family fortune. They were so angry that they were about to go crazy. Some people cried out in surprise, some people shouted in disbelief, some people roared in anger, some roared in madness. The entire hall fell into chaos. The deafening sound waves reverberated in the hall, causing everyone's eardrums to hurt. In the east corner of the grandstand, Ling Sihai sat stiffly in his seat, his hands tightly grasping the armrest of the chair, and the blue veins on his forehead bulged. He stared at Ji Tianqing with his eyes wide open, his expression extremely ugly. How is this possible? He's only been in the Sky Pillar sect for a few months. How could he have reached the third level of the Profound Enlightening Realm and even defeated a fifth level Profound Enlightening Realm werewolf? Why? Why did Ji Tianqing, that little bastard, grow so quickly? Ling Sihai's expression was hideous and twisted. His eyes were spewing flames of anger as he cursed in his heart. Just a moment ago, when he saw Ji Tianqing, he was wild with joy, thinking that he would be able to see Ji Tianqing die without a complete corpse. However, the result was completely out of his expectations. Ji Tianqing had actually defeated Werewolf and Ing. How could he believe this? How could he not be mad with anger? After a long time, Ling Sihai's hideous expression finally calmed down, and his eyes returned to their cold and gloomy state. He glared at Ji Tianqing with resentment and cursed in his heart, "Little bastard, I didn't expect you to have grown to this extent. However, I've already made preparations. No matter what, you'll definitely die. Instead of staying in the Sky Pillar sect obediently, you walked right into a trap and ran to Flame Spirit City. This is the will of heaven. The day you leave Flame Spirit City will be the day of your death. At the same time, Lei Qianjun quickly walked into the arena with 4 bodyguards. The 4 bodyguards quickly walked to Ji Tianqing's side and carried the unconscious werewolf Ning away. Lei Qianjun raised his hand and motioned for the audience in the stands to quiet down. Everyone. This young man was able to defeat werewolf Ning. This is really beyond my expectations. This is simply a miracle. I'm also very surprised. After so many years in charge of the Beast King Casino, this is the first time I've met such an outstanding young man. However, since everyone has already placed their bets, then you must accept your loss. If anyone dares to take this opportunity to cause trouble, humph. He did not finish his sentence, but the nearly 1,000 audience members in the arena knew what he meant. In Flame Spirit City, no one dared to cause trouble without reason. Finding trouble with the Heavenly Eagle Casino was no different from seeking death. Many of the audience members had lost so badly that they had lost their family fortune. They all had mournful faces and looked as if they had lost their parents. However, no matter how angry and sorrowful they were, they could only endure it. Tonight's duel had come to an end. More than a dozen managers entered the hall with hundreds of bodyguards. They maintained order around the stands to ensure that the audience left in an orderly manner and that no accidents would occur. Lei Qianjun turned his head to look at Ji Tianqing, who was next to him. He smiled in appreciation and nodded at him. Young man, you're really amazing. Your duel with Werewolf Ning just now was an eye-opener for me. Let's go. I'll bring you to see our boss now. If you have any wishes, just say it. The boss will definitely fulfill them. After that, he led Ji Tianqing out of the arena and through a secret passage to see the boss of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. Logically speaking, Ji Tianqing had severely injured Werewolf Ning to the point of near death. It would take at least half a year for him to recover. Lei Qianjun should be angry or worried. However, he was in an extremely good mood. He could not hide the smile on his face and his attitude towards Ji Tianqing was very amiable. Ji Tianqing guessed the reason. It must be because of his miraculous victory that made thousands of audience members lose everything. The Heavenly Eagle Casino made a huge profit. No one would know how much the Heavenly Eagle Casino had made tonight. However, Ji Tianqing could guess that it must be an astronomical figure. About half an hour later, Lei Qianjun brought him to the depths of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. They entered a magnificent palace. In the brightly lit main hall, there were musical instruments and women singing. The rich aroma of wine and meat wafted in the air. When Ji Tianqing followed Lei Qianjun into the main hall, he saw more than a dozen beautiful young women wearing thin silk dresses dancing in the hall. On the throne at the head of the hall, there was a tall and sturdy man with white hair and beard. He was sitting on the throne with great confidence. Chapter 271. Even though the burly man was enjoying a warm, fragrant embrace and the sound of fine wine and fine food, he looked like he was about to indulge in sensual pleasures. However, Ji Tianqing could tell that this person was not frivolous at all. He had a domineering and fierce aura, and his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. Without a doubt, this person was the mysterious Heavenly Eagle Workshop owner. Seeing Lei Qianjun bring Ji Tianqing into the main hall, the Heavenly Eagle Workshop owner raised his hand slightly. The music in the hall suddenly stopped. The singers and dancers all bowed and left the hall one after another. Even the two beauties who were nestled in the arms of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop's owner said their goodbyes in a soft voice and left together. In the blink of an eye, only the Heavenly Eagle Workshop owner, Lei Qianjun, and Ji Tianqing were left in the main hall. Lei Qianjun walked into the main hall and reported, "Workshop owner, Ji Tianqing is here. This child has already defeated Werewolf Shadow on the spot and severely injured him. The Heavenly Eagle workshop owner held a wine cup and slowly tasted it. A playful smile appeared on his face as he sized up Ji Tianqing with eagle-like eyes. After a moment, he nodded and said with a smile, "Not bad. I haven't seen such an interesting junior in many years. You're only in your teens, but you defeated Werewolf Shadow with your mere strength at the 3rd level of the Mystic Enlightening Realm. Little fellow, if I'm not wrong, you should be an elite genius of the Sky Pillar sect, right?" Ji Tianqing was wearing the white robes of the Sky Pillar sect's inner sect disciples. With the Heavenly Eagle workshop owner's experience, he could naturally recognize him at a glance. He could not see through the Heavenly Eagle workshop owner's intentions, so he did not answer the question. He only cupped his hands respectfully and said, "Junior Ji Tianqing greets the Heavenly Eagle workshop owner." What kind of person was the Heavenly Eagle workshop owner? Naturally, he could see through Ji Tianqing's intentions. He only smiled and did not delve into the matter. He held the wine cup again and carefully tasted it. He asked slowly, "Little fellow, since you've completed the challenge according to the rules, tell me your wish. As long as it's within my power, I can fulfill your wishes." Ji Tianqing did not beat around the bush. He cupped his hands and said, "Owner, I need a detailed map of the hidden Fog Mountain range." The owner of the Heavenly Eagle workshop immediately frowned. He looked at him indifferently and asked in a deep voice, "Kid, the hidden Fog Mountain range is one of the most dangerous places in the ancient realm. Why do you want a map of that place? You are a young genius. Do not enter such a dangerous place and lose your life for nothing." In fact, he didn't care what Ji Tianqing wanted to do, whether he wanted to enter the hidden Fog Mountain range, or whether he could come out alive. He only said that to persuade Ji Tianqing to change his wish. After all, there was only one detailed map of the hidden Fog Mountain range in the entire Flame Spirit City, and it was in his hands. This map was incomparably precious. It could be said to be a priceless treasure. He was weighing the pros and cons in his heart, deciding whether or not to hand over the map. Ji Tianqing bowed to him and said calmly, "Thank you for your reminder, owner. However, I do need that map. I hope you can fulfill my wish." Seeing that Ji Tianqing was neither servile nor overbearing and was determined to ask for the map, the owner of the Heavenly Eagle workshop frowned and looked at Lei Qianjun. "Director Lei, how much did we earn tonight?" Lei Qianjun glanced at Ji Tianqing. He hesitated for a moment and did not speak. With Ji Tianqing, an outsider, present, it was inconvenient for him to reveal the exact amount. However, the owner of the Heavenly Eagle workshop had no intention of avoiding Ji Tianqing. Lei Qianjun could only answer truthfully, "Owner, nearly 1,000 gamblers lost everything. Just now, the manager reported that we earned more than 3,000 spirit stones and more than 500 million taels of silver. There were also some profound weapons, elixirs, and other bets." Although Ji Tianqing was mentally prepared, he could not help but be secretly shocked when he heard the amount. He knew very well that top sects like the Sky Pillar sect and the Tianjian sect only had a little more than 1,000 spirit stones in reserve. Tonight, he had defeated Werewolf Shadow and earned the Heavenly Eagle Casino more than 3,000 spirit stones. This was definitely a shocking amount of wealth. In addition to the spirit stones, there were also 500 million taels of silver, profound weapons, and elixirs. This was also a huge amount of wealth. Of course, the Heavenly Eagle Casino was a large enterprise. This wealth would soon be spent, so it would be difficult to preserve it all. Even so, Ji Tianqing could feel the powerful foundation of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. When the owner of the Heavenly Eagle workshop heard Lei Qianjun's report, a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. Clearly, he had not expected such a big surprise tonight. Ji Tianqing had brought him such a huge amount of wealth. His expression softened. When he looked at Ji Tianqing again, his eyes were much more amiable. After pondering for a moment, he nodded and said, "All right. Since I have set the rules, I will fulfill my promise and fulfill your wish. After saying that, he took out an ancient yellowed scroll from his space ring. A gentle green light enveloped the scroll and flew to Ji Tianqing. Young man, this map of the hidden Fog Mountain Range is the only one in the entire Flame Spirit City. It is a priceless treasure. I am giving it to you. You must take good care of it. Also, I hope that you will live well and not die young. After all, a young talent like you will have a great chance of working for me in the future. Ha ha ha. The owner of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop was all smiles as he laughed boldly. Ji Tianqing took the scroll solemnly and cupped his hands. Thank you for fulfilling my wish. I will not disturb you any longer. I will take my leave now. The owner of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop nodded slightly and ordered in a deep voice, Director Lei, see the guest out. Lei Qianjun hurriedly cupped his hands and left the hall with Ji Tianqing. The two of them passed through several palaces and walked through a corridor with carved railings and made of jade. They walked toward the entrance of the casino. Along the way, Lei Qianjun smiled amiably and said to Ji Tianqing in a meaningful tone, Little brother, with our master's status, there are very few people who can catch his eye. The owner actually praised you to your face just now. This is rare. It seems that he is very interested in you. Ji Tianqing understood what he was hinting at, so he replied with a calm expression, Thank you for your help, owner. I'm already very grateful that you're willing to give me the map. As for other things, I do not dare to think too much. After all, I am a disciple of the sect and have an important responsibility to fulfill. After hearing his explanation, Lei Qianjun understood that he was rejecting the owner's favor. Lei Qianjun sighed regretfully and said with a smile, That's right. Young man, with your talent in martial arts, you will definitely be valued in the sect. Your future will be bright. After a while, the two of them arrived at the entrance of the casino. Lei Qianjun cupped his hands and said, Well, I will see you off here. Young man, take care. We will meet again. Ji Tianqing also cupped his hands and bowed. He said goodbye and walked out of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. After leaving the Heavenly Eagle Casino, he walked toward an inn in the city. Next, he planned to study the map carefully and make sufficient preparations before leaving for the hidden Fog Mountain Range. Chapter 272. Under the night sky, Flame Spirit City was quiet and peaceful. After Ji Tianqing left the East City Market, he stayed in an inn in the city. After closing the doors and windows, he sat in front of his desk and took out a map from his space ring, preparing to study it. When he slowly unrolled the scroll and saw the map of the hidden Fog Mountain Range, he frowned as surprise flashed across his eyes. He did not expect the terrain of the hidden Fog Mountain Range to be so complicated. The map was filled with crisscrossing lines, like a spider's web, outlining the terrain and layout of the hidden Fog Mountain Range. Just looking at the map made one feel that it was very complicated and cumbersome. If one really entered the hidden Fog Mountain Range, they would not be able to differentiate between north and south and would encounter all kinds of dangers. Ji Tianqing was a little emotional as he thought to himself, no wonder so many martial artists entered the hidden Fog Mountain Range and died in the end. The terrain of the hidden Fog Mountain Range is extremely complicated. It is like a huge maze shrouded in layers of fog. Without a detailed map, no one would be able to walk out of it alive. Fortunately, the map in his hand not only marked the various dangerous places in the hidden Fog Mountain Range in detail, but it also drew a few red lines. Those eye-catching red lines were the routes to enter and exit the hidden Fog Mountain Range. Ji Tianqing carefully looked at the map and memorized the various dangerous places marked on the map, as well as the routes to enter and exit. After a full 4 hours, he had memorized the entire map. Only then did he put the scroll into his spatial ring. It was already late at night, and the entire Flame Spirit City had fallen into a deep sleep. Everything was silent. I have memorized the map of the hidden Fog Mountain Range. Tomorrow, I will buy some elixirs and charms in the city. Once I am ready, I can set off. Ji Tianqing muttered in a low voice. Then, he sat cross-legged on the bed and began to cultivate. During the battle in the demon cave, he was able to naturally temper his acupoints and quickly increase his strength at the critical moment of life and death. This allowed him to find a way to quickly increase his strength and also allowed him to comprehend the essence of the sword heart Tao. There was only one word, and that was battle. Only by growing in battle, experiencing the tempering of blood and fire, and the test of life and death would one be able to quickly master the sword heart Tao and become an expert in the sword Tao. It was precisely because he understood this that he had entered the Heavenly Eagle Casino without hesitation and challenged the Shadow Werewolf. In this way, not only would he be able to train himself in battle and raise his strength, but he would also be able to meet the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop after he succeeded in the challenge. It could be said that he was killing two birds with one stone. As it turned out, this was indeed a brave and wise move. Previously, in the duel with the werewolf Shadow, he had unleashed his lifetime's worth of cultivation and naturally refined an aperture point. Unfortunately, werewolf Shadow's strength was on par with his, and the battle ended very quickly. If he had more time and was in a more dangerous situation, he would definitely be able to refine one or two more acupoints. Of course, other than increasing his strength in battle, he still needed to constantly cultivate. Cultivation was like rowing a boat against the current. If you didn't advance, you would fall behind. You couldn't slack off for even a day. Unknowingly, another 8 hours passed. The sky outside the window was already bright. A new day had arrived. Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation, washed up, and left the inn. He went to the market in the East City again and wandered around the various shops, looking for and buying things that were useful to him. He spent a total of 10 spirit stones to buy a few healing and detoxifying pills, a few talismans with special effects, and some miscellaneous items. After he was done with his preparations, he left the market in the East City and walked out of Yanling City. The city gate was still tightly shut and was guarded by a few guards. After Ji Tianqing showed his identity token, the guards opened the city gate and let him out. He walked along the black stone path under the city gate and arrived at the black stone tablet 100 meters away. When he placed the token on the stone tablet and activated the formation, he left Yanling City with a swoosh. The scene in front of him changed, and he returned to the vast and boundless grassland, standing beside the black stone tablet. He released Qian Yu from the 100 treasures brocade pouch. Qian Yu's body flickered with blue light and immediately became more than 3 meters long. Qian Yu, fly northwest. The hidden fog mountain range is about 2,000 miles away. As he spoke, Ji Tianqing jumped onto Qian Yu's back and sat down. Qian Yu immediately flapped his wings and took to the skies, heading towards the northwest at a leisurely pace. Its speed was not fast and could not be compared to Yunyao's spirit crane. However, Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry. After all, Qian Yu's strength would slowly recover, and its flying speed would become faster in the future. He sat on Qian Yu's back and faced the strong wind in the sky. His eyes swept across the mountains below and looked toward the northwest. A topographic map of the hidden fog mountain range appeared in his mind. He was silently thinking about how to enter the hidden fog mountain range and how to investigate after entering. Time passed quickly. When the sun had set, Qian Yu was only halfway there. It had used up a lot of energy and had to stop to rest. It could only continue flying after recovering its energy. Ji Tianqing let it land in the vast mountain range and stopped at the peak of a mountain that was thousands of feet high. The area within a few hundred miles was a vast mountain range. It was desolate and uninhabited. The mountain range was filled with primitive forests. Towering ancient trees grew on the peaks and a thick layer of fallen leaves piled up on the ground. Ji Tianqing found a flat and open grassland on the peak of the mountain and used a few millstone stones and some formation materials to set up a simple formation. This was only a mystic level low-grade formation. It could not stop a mystic-level expert. However, it could shelter him from the wind and rain and protect him from the attacks of demonic beasts. He sat cross-legged on the millstone and closed his eyes to rest. He silently cultivated. Xian Yu shrank its body to the size of a kitten and went back into the 100 treasures brocade pouch to rest. Tonight, he would rest here for the night and continue his journey the next morning. He had plenty of time anyway. He was not in a hurry. Traveling in the vast mountain range late at night was not only slow, but also very dangerous. He would definitely attract the attacks of many demonic beasts. Resting on the peak of the mountain was the wisest choice. The mountain range was abnormally quiet at night. Occasionally, the roars of demonic beasts could be heard from afar. It added a sense of mystery and danger to the dark night. The sky was also filled with stars. The faint starlight shone down and covered Ji Tianqing's figure. His mind was tranquil, and he quickly entered a focused state of cultivation. However, in the middle of the night, when he was cultivating, he suddenly heard light footsteps coming from the peak of the mountain. He was instantly awakened. He immediately stopped cultivating and opened his eyes. He turned his head and looked around. From the corner of his eye, he saw a cold light flashing in the dark forest 100 meters away. He immediately recognized it. It was the cold light of a mystic weapon. Chapter 273. Ji Tianqing had become extremely vigilant after experiencing countless life and death situations. He immediately sensed that there were several martial artists in the dark forest. They were all armed with sharp blades and were approaching him with unknown intentions. He realized that something was wrong. His figure flashed as he jumped off the millstone and rushed down the mountain without hesitation. In this desolate and uninhabited mountain range, he had to be on guard against any martial practitioners who suddenly appeared with unknown intentions. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing used the shadowless step and left the open space in a few flashes. He rushed into the dense forest. He ran quickly through the forest and rushed to the foot of the mountain. He wanted to leave this troublesome place as soon as possible. Just as he left the open space, the martial artists in the forest let out a few deep roars and chased after him. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. One after another, black figures crossed the open space and the millstone. They were like ghosts in the night, chasing after Ji Tianqing as fast as the wind. Each of the black shadows held a shiny sword in their hands, which shone with a frightening cold light. There were a total of 10 martial artists in this group. They were of different heights, but their auras were all sharp and vigorous. They faintly emitted a murderous aura. More importantly, every martial artist was in the mystic comprehending realm. The speed at which they ran through the forest was even faster than Ji Tianqing. 9 of them were dressed in black. Only the burly leader was dressed in a blue robe. He took the lead and ran with all his might. His eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing's figure in front of him. His face was very gloomy, and his eyes were filled with excitement and murderous intent. Damn little bastard, I didn't expect you to be so vigilant. However, let's see where you can escape to in this vast mountain range. He roared coldly. His veins bulged as he gripped his sword tightly. He was exerting a lot of strength. After all, he had been waiting for this day for too long. 15 minutes passed quickly. The group chased after Ji Tianqing to the foot of the mountain. At this time, the two parties were still 100 meters apart. Ji Tianqing did not slow down in the slightest. He dashed madly through the forest at the foot of the mountain, and the distance between them grew larger and larger. Seeing this situation, the blue-robed man decisively gave the order. Duan Ming. You and the 3 brothers who are the best in Qinggong will pursue that little bastard with all your might. You must stop him. Among the black-clothed men following behind him, a thin middle-aged man with a cold gaze immediately said, "Yes, sir." After that, the skinny man led the 3 men in black and suddenly sped up towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was shuttling through the dense forest, nimbly crossing layers of ditches and obstacles as he ran towards the mountain in front of him. His expression was grave and gloomy, and there was a trace of confusion in his eyes. Damn bastard! There are actually 10 experts chasing after me. Who are these people? Before he could figure it out, the footsteps behind him became more and more hurried. He turned around and glanced behind him. He saw 4 men in black moving through the forest nimbly. They were approaching him quickly like ghosts. The 4 men were extremely fast. In just a short 15 minutes, they had caught up with him. Finally, at the river at the foot of the mountain, the 4 black-clothed men caught up with him and surrounded him. Ji Tianqing could no longer escape. He had to stand by the river bank, take out the black dragon sword from the space ring, and hold it tightly in his hand. He looked coldly at the 4 black-clothed men and asked in a low voice, "Who are you people? Why are you chasing after me?" The 4 black-clothed men spread out and slowly walked around him. The swords in their hands shone with a cold light, and their bodies emitted a cold murderous intent. In the face of Ji Tianqing's questioning, the 4 men were expressionless and did not open their mouths to answer. Ji Tianqing frowned. His eyes looked past the 4 black-clothed men and into the forest not far away. He could guess that the 4 black-clothed men should be assassins. The real leader had not arrived yet. Sure enough, after a short while, the blue-robed man rushed out of the forest with 5 black-clothed men and rushed to the river bank. The 9 black-clothed men surrounded Ji Tianqing. They were all holding dark weapon-sharp swords in their hands, and their bodies were full of murderous intent. The blue-robed man walked quickly into the field. He stared at Ji Tianqing with a gloomy eyes and a smug sneer. "Ji Tianqing, you didn't expect this, did you? We meet again." When Ji Tianqing heard this familiar voice, his body suddenly trembled. His eyes became gloomy and complicated. He looked at the blue-robed man in disbelief and asked in a low voice, "Ling Sihai. It's you." He had never expected to see Ling Sihai in the ancient realm of stars. Moreover, Ling Sihai had brought 9 mystic comprehending experts to chase after him. Obviously, this was premeditated. Ling Sihai grinned and revealed a sinister sneer. He said in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing. You killed my daughter, Yunfei. I must avenge her. If I don't tear you to pieces, I won't be able to vent the hatred in my heart. You think you'll be safe after leaving the Imperial City and entering the Sky Pillar sect? Even if I have to chase you to the ends of the earth, I'll take your dog life. In order to deal with you, I entered Flame Spirit City a month ago and made arrangements. I didn't expect you to seek your own death by entering Flame Spirit City. It's the will of the heavens. Even the heavens are helping me." After hearing Ling Sihai's words, Ji Tianqing finally understood. "I see. Father told me in his letter that Ling Sihai had secretly left the Imperial City of Green Cloud Imperial City. So he secretly sneaked into the ancient realm of stars. Ling Sihai recruited these 9 assassins in Flame Spirit City. From the moment I left Flame Spirit City, they followed me all the way here." After understanding the whole story, he gripped the black dragon sword tightly with both hands. The true energy in his body circulated rapidly, bursting with battle intent and killing intent. "Ling Sihai. Whether you believe it or not, I'll say it one last time. I didn't kill Yunfei." Although this was the truth, how could Ling Sihai believe it? "Ji Tianqing. You little bastard, you're about to die and you still want to deny it? Everyone, go. Tear this little bastard into pieces and burn his bones to ashes." Ling Sihai roared with killing intent and gave the order. The 9 black-clothed men brandished their swords without hesitation, using powerful killing moves to besiege Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing had expected that Ling Sihai wouldn't believe him, so he didn't waste any more words. With a clang, he drew the black dragon sword and counterattacked. Roar! The moment the black dragon sword was unsheathed, it lit up with a dazzling cold light. It slashed out a 5-meter-long sword light that seemed to split heaven and earth. The two black-clothed men closest to Ji Tianqing and at the front had no room to dodge and were instantly struck by the black dragon sword. Bang! Chapter 274. Once the black dragon sword was unsheathed, it would taste blood. The dazzling sword radiance and the illusory image of the divine dragon were the strongest attack of the black dragon sword. The two men in black were both at LV5 of the Tongxian realm. They were also assassins who walked on the edge of death all year round. Although they were cautious and had rich combat experience, they were still unable to block the strongest attack of the black dragon sword. This was probably the proverb, "One strong man can defeat 10 skilled men." A long and narrow wound was left on their chests by the sword light. White bones were exposed, and dark red blood gushed out from the wound. It was fortunate that they did not die on the spot. They could only lie on the ground and twitch, unable to fight anymore. As soon as the two sides exchanged blows, Ji Tianqing made such an earth-shattering strike and severely injured the two assassins on the spot. Ling Sihai and the other 7 assassins were shocked, and their eyes were filled with horror. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed that this was an attack that a LV3 Tongxian realm martial artist could make. While everyone was still in a daze, Ji Tianqing took the lead to attack with his sword. He unleashed all his potential to perform his swordsmanship and made dazzling sword radiance all over the sky. Swish swish swish. 12 cold sword lights spread out in the night sky, scattering like a fan toward the surrounding black-clothed assassins. The assassins immediately came to their senses and did not dare to underestimate Ji Tianqing anymore. They desperately defended and counterattacked. Bang bang bang. The sword radiance and sword radiance collided fiercely in the night sky, bursting out dazzling light and bursting out violent and raging energy chi. Ji Tianqing's attack was blocked, but the other assassins took the opportunity to attack fiercely. Dozens of sword radiance enveloped him. He was suddenly in a life-or-death situation. His will to live burst out and his martial arts potential burst out again. He desperately waved his sword to block and kill. The genuine origin in his body was pushed to the limit, surging through his meridians and fiercely washing and refining his aperture acupoints. In just 10 breaths, the second aperture acupoint of his third sword vein was successfully refined. Of course, Ji Tianqing was completely focused on fighting the black-clothed assassins with all his might, so he didn't notice this. He used shadowless steps to reach his maximum speed, flashing and dodging the sword radiance and sword radiance. Ling Sihai and the 7 black-clothed assassins all launched a fierce attack with murderous intent. Every move and every style was a fatal blow. These 7 black-clothed assassins had obviously fought together often and had already formed a tacit understanding with each other. They had even practiced an exquisite joint attack sword technique. The 7 of them surrounded Ji Tianqing and attacked him fiercely. They advanced and retreated in an orderly manner, attacking and defending as one. Their attacks were like stormy waves, and their power was getting stronger and stronger. Ji Tianqing felt more and more pressure, and the situation became more and more dangerous. He could die on the spot at any time. Both sides fought fiercely by the side of the surging river. Their figures flickered back and forth at a speed that was too fast for the eyes to take in. Ding ding dang dang, the sound of swords colliding was endless, and the violent sword chi and strong wind were constantly spreading in all directions. The ground on the riverbank was covered with sand, which was also stirred up by the wind and sword chi. It was like a heavy rain. As time passed, Ji Tianqing's stamina gradually weakened, and he was beaten to a pulp. He had exchanged hundreds of moves with Ling Sihai and the others. His genuine origin was greatly consumed. He was sweating all over and his face was as pale as paper. Although he had a deep foundation in exquisite sword technique, using the black dragon sword to stab several assassins. But those assassins were incomparably experienced and always cleverly avoided their vital points. The assassins were only slightly injured and still retained their fighting strength. Ji Tianqing's injuries were more serious. He had suffered 6 sword wounds. The clothes on his chest and back were torn, revealing hideous wounds that were constantly gushing out dark red blood. Especially the bloody hole on his waist. It was a sneak attack by Ling Sihai when he was resisting the attacks of the assassins. However, in this tragic and dangerous fight, he had completely stimulated his potential and refined 6 aperture acupoints. Now his third sword vein had refined 7 aperture acupoints. He only needed 1 more to reach LV4 of the Tongxian realm. Ji Tianqing. You are at death's door. Do you still want to resist stubbornly? Ling Sihai held the 3-foot-long sword in his hand and stared at him with resentment. He shouted with a ferocious face, kneel down and accept your death. Pay with your life for my daughter Yunfei. Ji Tianqing waved his sword to block the attacks of the 7 assassins and roared in a low voice, Ling Sihai. Dream on. Finally, he desperately swung his sword and forced the 3 assassins to retreat. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he immediately put away the Black Dragon sword and used all his strength to activate a huge sword radiance to perform the ultimate move of the Flying Star sword technique. Crimson Dragon Flash. The 2-meter-long golden sword radiance was burning with golden flames. Like a golden dragon, it fiercely attacked the 3 assassins in black. Bang! In the deafening sound, the 2 assassins in black could not dodge in time and were immediately blown away by the Crimson Dragon Flash. The swords in their hands were thrown out and fell into the surging river. Their chests and abdomens were cut with a 2-finger-wide wound. Pieces of internal organs and a large amount of blood gushed out from the wound and sprinkled on the river bank, emitting a strong smell of blood. After the 2 fell to the ground, they rolled a few times and stopped moving. Obviously, they had stopped breathing and died on the spot. Only 5 of the 7 assassins were left. A gap was immediately torn in the encirclement. Ling Sihai and the 5 assassins were stunned for a moment. They were shocked by the dazzling and terrifying Crimson Dragon Flash. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing made a prompt decision to break through the gap and escape upstream along the river bank. He didn't care about his injuries at all, and he forcefully endured the piercing pain as he ran with all his might. In the blink of an eye, he rushed more than 10 meters away and drilled into the dense jungle. Ling Sihai and the assassins came back to their senses and immediately chased after him with angry yells. However, Ling Sihai only brought 4 assassins and continued to chase after Ji Tianqing. There was still 1 assassin in black who had to stay behind to deal with the bodies of the 2 assassins and treat his 2 seriously injured companions. Both sides began the chase again. Under the curtain of night in the jungle, they desperately ran back and forth. Ji Tianqing was drenched in sweat and panted as he ran. His physical strength was constantly depleting and his eyes became a little blurry. However, he still gritted his teeth and held on, desperately trying to escape. He ran wildly for 2 hours, crossed several mountains, and finally got rid of Ling Sihai and the others. At this time, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. He staggered into a cave and immediately fell to the ground, gasping for breath. After a moment of rest, he quickly took out 2 healing and true yuan pills and took them. He also bandaged his wounds. He was very clear that he was only temporarily safe. Chapter 275. Although Ji Tianqing was extremely sleepy and seriously injured, he was in urgent need of medical treatment. If it was possible, he just wanted to lie down on the ground and sleep. But he had to stay awake and did not dare to delay. After simply treating his injuries, he continued to escape into the depths of the vast mountain range. Just after he left the cave, Ling Sihai and the others followed his tracks and chased after him in less than 100 breaths. The 4 black-clothed assassins checked the cave and found traces of blood that had not yet dried up. Ling Sihai immediately cursed with a ferocious face and ordered to continue the chase. The four assassins were all experts in pursuit and assassination. Even if Ji Tianqing left a little trace, it would not be able to escape their pursuit. The five people kept running in the mountain forest, getting closer and closer to Ji Tianqing. Time passed quickly, and the dark night gradually dissipated. When the sky was bright and a red glow appeared in the sky, Ling Sihai and the others once again caught up with Ji Tianqing. At this time, Ji Tianqing was running wildly in a large canyon. His clothes were completely drenched and dyed dark red by the bloodstains, making him look extremely miserable. However, his wounds were bandaged and treated, and he applied hemostatic and healing powders, so the wounds were no longer bleeding. Moreover, the medicinal pills he took had been refined, and the surging medicinal efficacy helped him recover 60% of his true essence. This canyon was located between two towering mountains. The valley was damp and dark, full of all kinds of strange flowers and grasses, as well as layers of vines and thorns. In the early morning, the canyon was filled with morning fog, and there were sparkling dew between the flowers and leaves. The colorful flowers, quietly blooming in the valley, looked very beautiful. But Ji Tianqing was not in the mood to appreciate the scenery. He passed through the shrubs and flowers as fast as the wind, making a rustling sound, and countless drops of dew. Not far behind him, about 100 meters away, Ling Sihai and the four black-clothed assassins were in hot pursuit, carrying swords and sabers. The five of them sprinted over, bringing with them a gust of wind, blowing the flowers and leaves all over the place. A quarter of an hour later, Ji Tianqing rushed into the depths of the canyon. This was already the bottom of the valley. A straight and steep mountain wall blocked his path. He had no choice but to stop and look around with a serious expression. There were cliffs to the left, right, and in front of him. The cliffs were covered with slippery moss and layers of vines. The surrounding soft ground was covered with weeds that were half the height of a person, as well as wildflowers and small trees of different colors. Behind him, Ling Sihai and the four assassins were rushing over as fast as lightning. Apart from retreating out of the canyon the way he came, there was no other way for him to escape. Damn it! This is a dead end. Ji Tianqing secretly gritted his teeth and cursed in a low voice, his eyes surging with a fierce light. At the same time, Ling Sihai and the four black-clothed assassins rushed forward and surrounded him. Everyone's bodies trembled slightly as they panted violently. They were not in a hurry to attack. Gripping their swords and sabers, they stared at Ji Tianqing and secretly adjusted their breathing. "Little bastard, let's see where you can run off to this time." Ling Sihai gripped his blue sword and savagely glared at Ji Tianqing. He gnashed his teeth and shouted, "Even the heavens want to kill you. Your life is destined to end, so why haven't you surrendered yet?" Ji Tianqing was expressionless. Tightly gripping the black dragon sword, his entire body surged with killing intent. He was secretly communicating with the little black dragon with his spiritual sense and gravely asked, "Little black dragon, can you still hold on?" The black dragon sword communicated telepathically, "Old Ji, in the previous battle, I used up too much of my energy. I only have 40% left, so I can't change back to my original body and take you out of this canyon. But I can still barely hold on and fight with you one more time." Every time the black dragon sword was unsheathed, the divine dragon phantom was the most powerful and dazzling strike. To be able to unleash such a stunning strike, Ji Tianqing's strength was undoubtedly required, but it mainly consumed the little black dragon's energy. In addition, Ji Tianqing had previously used the black dragon sword to fight a bloody battle with the assassins for a long time. The little black dragon's energy was constantly being consumed and declining, and now it only had about 40% left. Hearing its answer, Ji Tianqing silently muttered in his heart, "Since that's the case, then today I can only fight with my back to the river." He made up his mind, his eyes surging with a cold light as he stared at Ling Sihai and shouted in a deep voice, "Ling Sihai, let's settle the grudges between us today." Ling Sihai revealed a sinister smile and roared with killing intent, "Only your head and blood can wash away the hatred. Go to hell. Kill. Following his order, the four black-clothed assassins waved their swords and charged at Ji Tianqing with murderous intent, launching a siege. Whoosh 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 whoosh. More than a dozen dazzling saber lights and sword shadows slashed toward Ji Tianqing from four directions, bursting forth with a fierce energy. Ling Sihai also joined the battle, waving his sword and using his supreme sword techniques, thrusting out 6 sword glows that attacked Ji Tianqing's vital points. Ji Tianqing was immediately in danger and was about to lose his life. At this critical moment, his heart was filled with an intense desire to live. Filled with unwillingness, he desperately waved his sword and used his supreme sword techniques to launch a counterattack. Sword glows and sword glows fiercely collided in the air, producing the crisp sounds of metal clashing. Clang clang clang. Ji Tianqing was shaken back on the spot, his body trembling and bleeding. The black dragon sword in his hand almost flew out of his hand. The little black dragon's aura became even weaker, and the power of its sword intent was also constantly weakening. Ji Tianqing swung his sword and exchanged a few blows with Ling Sihai and the others, but then he was struck in the back, blood gushing out of his wounds. The black dragon sword was extremely weak and could no longer fight. However, Ling Sihai and the others became braver and fiercer as they fought, launching fierce attacks with murderous intent. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing could only put away the black dragon sword and use the flying star sword technique. He fully activated the power of the sword embryo, directing 3 golden sword glows to attack the 4 black-clothed assassins. Thousand Feather Blade. The 3 sword glows immediately split into 9, stabbing at the vital points of the 4 assassins from various tricky angles. Whoosh 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 whoosh. In just 5 breaths, the 9 sword glows stabbed nearly 1,000 times at a speed faster than the speed of light. The area within a 10-meter radius was filled with golden sword glows, becoming dazzling and filled with sword chi. Such exquisite sword techniques immediately changed the expressions of the 4 assassins as they waved their swords to block in horror. However, they could not block at all. Their vital points were hit by the sword glows one after another, and blood was constantly spurting out. After 5 breaths, the sky full of sword glows and the 9 sword glows dissipated. The 4 black-clothed assassins were covered in wounds and bloody holes. They had been pierced into sieves. 3 of them fell to the ground on the spot, their bodies badly mangled and their auras cut off. The last one did not fall, but he was also seriously injured and on the verge of death. Blood was constantly foaming out of his mouth and nose, and his body was on the verge of collapse. Chapter 276. Ling Sihai's body trembled, and his face was ghastly pale. When he left Flame Spirit City, he was full of confidence and thought that he would definitely succeed. Even if Ji Tianqing's speed of growth was shocking, he would definitely be able to kill him with 9 mystic comprehending realm experts. However, when he fought with Ji Tianqing, he realized how terrifying Ji Tianqing's potential was. The 9 experienced assassins were all at least at LV5 of the mystic comprehending realm. However, these assassins were either killed or injured by Ji Tianqing, and they had all lost their ability to fight. Now, he was the only one left to face Ji Tianqing alone. When he saw Ji Tianqing's murderous look, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine, and a trace of regret flashed through his heart. He did not regret coming to the Star Ancient Realm to seek revenge on Ji Tianqing. He only regretted that he had underestimated Ji Tianqing and did not recruit more powerful assassins. Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly and slowly stepped forward. He said in a low voice, "Ling Sihai, it's your turn. Now that things have come to this, we can only fight to the death. Don't even think about running away. You should know that you can't escape." Ling Sihai was at LV4 of the Mystic Comprehending Realm and was very close to LV5. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, had successfully refined another acupoint in the battle earlier. At this moment, he had refined all 8 acupuncture points in the 3rd sword vein and had naturally advanced to LV4 of the Mystic Comprehending Realm. The outcome of this bloody fight was already decided. When Ling Sihai saw Ji Tianqing approaching, he immediately retreated with an ugly expression. He held the green sword tightly with both hands and shouted fiercely, "Ji Tianqing! Stop it! I have something to say. I believe you. Yunfei was not killed by you. There must be a misunderstanding. Stop it for now. When I go back and investigate, I will definitely clear your name." There was no doubt that Ling Sihai was scared. He actually agreed with Ji Tianqing's words and begged for mercy in disguise. Ji Tianqing suddenly sneered and said jokingly, "Ling Sihai, you finally believe that Ling Yunfei was not killed by me?" "I do. Of course, I believe you." Ling Sihai suppressed his anger and humiliation and nodded repeatedly. Ji Tianqing sneered, "Hee, I'll tell you the truth. It was actually Ji Ling who personally killed Ling Yunfei and framed me." Ling Sihai was stunned for a moment, apparently unable to believe this fact. However, in order to survive, he nodded without hesitation and said, "That's right. I had my suspicions too. Ji Tianqing, since this is a misunderstanding, please let me go. I will investigate this thoroughly." Before he could finish, Ji Tianqing interrupted him. "No need." Ji Tianqing coldly said, "From the moment you chased after me, you were destined to die. Since you already know the truth, then die in peace." As soon as his voice fell, he did not give Ling Sihai a chance to speak. He immediately activated two-sword chi and used the second move of the Flying Star Sword technique. Wind Thunder Strike. Two huge golden sword chi slashed towards Ling Sihai from the left and right. The dazzling sword chi and the violent wind mixed into a golden thunderbolt and instantly struck Ling Sihai. Boom! With a thunderous explosion, Ling Sihai's figure was drowned in the golden light. His green sword flew out and fell into the grass not far away. A 3-meter-wide pit was created on the ground, splashing mud and grass all over the sky. The deafening sound reverberated in the canyon for a long time. Ling Sihai was badly mutilated by the wind and thunderstrike. His body fell into the big pit, and half of his body was buried by the soil that fell from the sky. Everything was over. Just as Ji Tianqing said, the grudge between him and the Ling family was completely settled. The valley was silent, and only the smell of blood quietly filled the air. Ling Sihai was dead, and 3 of the 4 assassins he brought with him were also dead. The assassin who was lucky not to die, fell to the ground covered in blood and fell into a coma. Ji Tianqing staggered over, picked up the sword on the ground, and pierced the assassin's throat. After doing all this, he had exhausted all his strength. His whole body went limp as he sat on the grass, gasping for breath silently. After an unknown period of time, his physical strength recovered a little. He took out a few pills from the space ring and took them. Time passed quietly, and the morning fog in the canyon gradually dispersed. The sun rose slowly, sprinkling a ray of golden sunlight into the valley. About 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing used his energy to suppress the injury, and his true essence also recovered a little. He simply treated the injury, and returned the way he came, leaving the deep canyon. After he was far away from the canyon, he was completely safe. At noon, he found a secluded and dry cave in the mountains and settled down for the time being. He spent 2 hours to set up a formation at the entrance of the cave. Then, he sat cross-legged in the cave and silently used his energy to heal his injury and recover his strength. This night of chasing and killing had greatly damaged his true essence, and his injuries were disastrous. He could only stay in the cave to heal his injury, and continue his journey after he recovered his strength. 2 days passed quickly. On the morning of the 3rd day, Ji Tianqing finished his treatment and opened his eyes. After 2 days of recuperation, he consumed 4 black-level upper-grade pills and finally recovered his true essence. As for his internal injury, he had recovered 60 to 70%, and it did not affect his movement for the time being. However, the sword wounds on his body had left many scars, which could not be healed in a short period of time. After dawn, Ji Tianqing left the cave and woke up Qianyu in the 100 treasures brocade pouch. After resting for 2 days, Qianyu had recovered 80% to 90% of its strength, and it carried him into the sky to continue their journey to the hidden fog mountain range. That night, Qianyu carried Ji Tianqing across thousands of mountains and rivers, and they finally arrived at the hidden fog mountain range after flying for nearly 1,000 miles. Even during the day, the hidden fog mountain range was shrouded in layers of fog, making it difficult to see anything. It was late at night, and the fog in the mountain range was thicker and more mysterious and dangerous. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry to enter the hidden fog mountain range, and he asked Qianyu to stop at the entrance of the canyon. Qianyu, the hidden fog mountain range is very dangerous, and it's not suitable to enter at night. We'll rest in this canyon tonight, and we'll enter tomorrow morning. Qianyu did as told and landed at the entrance of the canyon. It shrunk its body to the size of a kitten, and it went back into the 100 treasures brocade pouch to rest. Ji Tianqing stood at the entrance of the canyon, and with the help of the dim starlight in the night sky, he looked around and observed his surroundings. The canyon he was in was one of the entrances to the hidden fog mountain range, and the canyon was shrouded in thick fog that had not dissipated for many years. Chapter 277. The canyon was dark and quiet. There was not even a gust of wind. Occasionally, a ray of starlight would shine into the canyon through the gaps in the fog. Ji Tianqing sat on a black rock, holding the black ancient book and reading it carefully. Before this, he had already flipped through the contents of the ancient book many times. He stared at the last few pages of the book. There was still a corner of the torn page, and he could vaguely see a line of small words. Full Moon Lake. The aura of a divine item has appeared there. It was just a few words, but they contained important information. When he saw this line of words, he decided to investigate and came to the hidden fog mountain range alone. According to this line of words in the ancient book, he could conclude that the so-called divine item's aura should be referring to the heavenly star bead. The aura of the heavenly star bead had appeared in the full moon lake before. After he obtained the map of the hidden fog mountain range, he had carefully checked the routes and locations marked on the map. In the depths of the hidden fog mountain range, there was indeed a place called the Full Moon Lake. From the canyon where he was now to the Full Moon Lake, he had to pass through more than half of the hidden fog mountain range and at least 7 to 8 dangerous regions. After a long time, Ji Tianqing closed the book. His eyes were filled with anticipation as he muttered softly, "I hope I can successfully find the whereabouts of the heavenly star bead. My risk was not in vain." He solemnly put away the black ancient book, closed his eyes, and began to cultivate. The silent and long night finally passed. After dawn, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation. After packing up, he walked into the canyon. The canyon in the morning was shrouded in a thick fog, and the valley was filled with the fragrance of flowers and dew. Ji Tianqing stepped through the knee-high grass, splashing countless drops of dew as he walked firmly into the depths of the canyon. The ground in the canyon was soft and damp, and it was covered with colorful flowers and shrubs. There were also many fruits of various sizes. Ji Tianqing had learned the 1,000 medicine collection before, so he could identify thousands of common medicinal herbs. With just a glance, he could recognize that most of the flowers and shrubs were medicinal herbs. Although most of the medicinal herbs were relatively common, they were not too rare. If he gathered all the medicinal herbs in the canyon, he could exchange them for at least 2 or 3 spirit stones. However, he was full of thoughts about finding the heavenly star bead. How could he have the time and leisure to gather medicinal herbs? About 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing arrived at the end of the canyon. What appeared in front of him was a deep and narrow gravel path. The path was a gap between 2 mountain peaks. It was only about 3 meters wide, and there were straight and steep rock walls on both sides. If one stood on the path and looked up, they would only be able to see a sliver of the sky. Therefore, This path was called the sliver of sky. Gravel would often fall from the walls on both sides, piling up in the middle of the path, forming undulating piles of rocks. Ji Tianqing stood outside the entrance of the one-line sky and stared at the small path for a moment before stepping in. Of the heavenly star bead of the heavenly star bead of the canyon of the canyon. Of the heavenly star of the canyon of the heavens of the Li. He saw the colorful flowers as big as a washbasin. He thought they were ordinary flowers and did not pay much attention to them. However, when he walked past the huge flowers, they seemed to come alive. They stretched their necks and stuck to him. The huge flowers that were half open suddenly opened and turned into a huge mouth as big as a washbasin. They stuck to his body. The huge mouth was filled with sharp spikes that looked like rows of teeth. They immediately pierced through his robes, through the extremely tattered golden sun soft armor, and into his flesh. Ji Tianqing's body shook. He felt pain and numbness all over his body. His face turned pale. Damn it! It's the man-eating flower. He reacted instantly. The huge plants with thick roots and gorgeous flowers were the legendary man-eating flower. It was a monster that was between an animal and a plant. It was usually motionless and disguised as an ordinary flower. It would emit spiritual chi waves and fragrance to attract prey. Once the prey got close to it, the man-eating flower would open its bloody mouth and tightly wrap around the prey. It would use its sharp thorns to penetrate the prey's defense and use its sticky venom to numb and corrode the prey. Not to mention a human, even a monster with a strong body would find it hard to escape if it was entangled by the man-eating flower. In the end, it would be swallowed and not even its bones would be left. It would become the man-eating flower's nourishment. Ji Tianqing realized that something was wrong and struggled with all his might. However, his legs and waist were wrapped by the man-eating flower. Even if he used all his strength, he could not break free. Luckily, he could still move his hands. He immediately took out the black dragon sword from his spatial ring and slashed at the man-eating flower. Swish swish swish. The dark green stems of the man-eating flower were as thick as his arm. They were instantly cut off by the sharp black dragon sword. Dark green venom spilled out and sprinkled on the grass. Zzz, white smoke immediately rose from the ground. A large patch of wild grass was corroded into black ash. If this venom were to be poured on a human body, what would happen? Ji Tianqing watched in horror. He quickly jumped back to avoid being stained by the venom. Although the stems of the man-eating flower were cut off, its vitality was abnormally strong. The basin-sized flower was still wrapped around Ji Tianqing's legs and waist. The thorns were still drilling into his flesh and injecting the venom. He quickly tore off a few man-eating flowers and used the black dragon sword to cut them into pieces. He then threw them into the bushes at the side. He was finally out of danger. He could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Looking down at his legs and waist, he realized that there were large holes in his clothes where the man-eating flower had bitten. The wounds were filled with small pinholes. A large patch of his skin had turned dark purple. It was obvious that he had been poisoned. Luckily, he had already bought the antidote powder in Flame Spirit City. He quickly applied it to his wounds. Soon, it was effective. The numbness and pain all over his body disappeared. I was too careless this time. I was attacked by the man-eating flower before I even entered the hidden Fog Mountain range. What a bad start. Luckily, I reacted in time. If the poison had been worse, I would have been paralyzed and turned into fertilizer for the man-eating flower. After treating his wounds, Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, full of self-blame. He held the black dragon sword tightly and carefully stepped into the one-line sky. He advanced cautiously. After what happened just now, he finally realized how dangerous the hidden Fog Mountain range was. In this mountain range where there were few people, he could encounter danger at any time. Not only were living creatures, poisonous snakes, and insects fatal, but even the inconspicuous flowers and shrubs could be life-threatening. Chapter 278. It took Ji Tianqing an hour to cross the layers of rocks, but he only crossed the 1.5-mile-long one-line sky. When he walked out of the one-line sky, he suddenly felt that the world had become wider. He had truly entered the hidden fog mountain range. He stood on a withered patch of grass and looked around with his sharp eyes to observe his surroundings. There was a thick fog above his head that covered the rising sun, causing the surroundings to be slightly dark. He saw a withered and decaying forest not far ahead. The trees in the forest were sparse, and most of them were dark brown. The treetops were bare, and not a single green leaf could be seen. At a glance, the bare black trees were like tall wooden stakes that stood on the desolate ground. Some of the trees were twisted and crooked, and the treetops were split in all directions. It looked gloomy and was filled with the aura of death and decay. The ground was covered with withered yellow leaves, and the thick layer was like a quilt. The leaves at the bottom layer were already rotten and emitted an unpleasant smell. The forest was dead silent, and there was not even a trace of wind. The leaves on the ground did not move at all. The sky was gloomy and dark, causing the air to be filled with the aura of death and desolation, causing one's heart to feel heavy. Ji Tianqing stared at the strange withered forest and frowned as he muttered to himself. The forest after crossing the one-line sky is marked on the map as the Forest of Death. Other than that, there's no other information. He did not understand why this withered and dead forest was called the Forest of Death. However, he guessed that since this area was marked on the map, it must be a dangerous place. Unfortunately, this Forest of Death was a place that he had to pass to get to the Full Moon Lake. There was no way he could avoid it. If he avoided this Forest of Death, not only would he have to take a long detour, but he would also have to break into other dangerous places. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing gripped the black dragon's sword tightly and walked into the forest. Rustle, 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 his feet stepped on the withered yellow leaves on the ground, which made a soft sound. The surroundings were strangely quiet, and he could clearly hear his own footsteps and heartbeat. When he walked into the forest, he could clearly feel that the air was very oppressive. It was filled with a thick sense of decay and coldness. His face was solemn as he stepped forward. His right hand gripped the hilt of the black dragon's sword tightly. His mind was tense, and his heart was filled with vigilance and vigilance. Although there was nothing in the withered forest other than dead trees and fallen leaves, there was nothing else. However, he felt a chill run down his spine, as if a pair of invisible eyes were watching him in the dark. That strange intuition made him uneasy, and he had to be on guard. When he had taken several hundred steps and entered the depths of the forest, a pile of fallen leaves at the edge of the forest suddenly moved twice. The withered and yellowed leaves silently parted to the sides. A grayish-white skeletal hand with 5 curled finger bones crawled out of the soft, fertile soil. This skeletal hand was dark gray in color. It was unknown how long it had been buried underground. There were a few cracks and gaps on the 5 slender finger bones, which were stained with dark red mud. The skeletal hand gently pushed aside the withered leaves on the ground and slowly extended outwards. Immediately after, a second skeletal hand emerged from the soil and pushed aside the fallen leaves on the ground. The 2 skeletal hands gently moved the soil and tried their best to extend outwards, bringing out a grayish-white arm from the soil bit by bit. Not long after, the soil between the 2 palms surged faster, pushing the withered leaves to the sides. A grayish-white skull gradually emerged from the soil, shaking left and right as it struggled. This was a human skull. There was a fist-sized hole in the top of the skull, and a few cracks extended outwards from the hole. Its eyes were deeply sunken, and 2 balls of light blue flames were embedded in the 2 holes, just like its eyes. Its chin had disappeared, and only half of its mouth was left. Its teeth were also incomplete, and it looked very ferocious and terrifying. This skeleton used its palms to support itself on the ground and twisted its body left and right. Soon, it emerged from the soil. A hole was left in the soil, and it was immediately covered by the fallen leaves. The grayish-white skeleton looked into the depths of the forest and seemed to be able to see Ji Tianqing's figure. The blue flames in its eyes kept flickering. It staggered its skeletal feet, stepped over the fallen leaves on the ground, and chased into the depths of the forest. At the same time, the fallen leaves on the ground all around began to surge and separate to the sides. Countless grayish-white skeletal hands emerged from the soil and pushed aside the fallen leaves on the ground. Before long, complete or incomplete skeletons crawled out of the ground one after another. In the eye sockets of each skeleton, there were two balls of light blue flames that flickered with an evil light. Some skeletons were tall and burly, some were incomplete, missing arms or legs, some held rotten swords in their hands, and a few skeletons only had half of their bodies left. However, all the skeletons looked into the depths of the forest and silently opened their mouths, revealing their white teeth as if they were sneering silently. Ji Tianqing was still holding the black dragon sword tightly. His footsteps were heavy as he advanced in the forest, and his eyes were sharp as he observed his surroundings. The scenery around him had not changed. It was still covered with bare dark brown withered trees, and the ground was covered with a thick layer of dead leaves. However, he was already in the depths of the forest. The light was even darker, and the air was filled with wisps of gray fog. He could only see 100 meters away. Everything further away was covered by the fog. Not long after, he saw a ball of light blue light floating in the gray fog 100 meters away. The light seemed to be light as it floated quietly in the fog, looking particularly mysterious and strange. Ji Tianqing frowned. He slowed down and continued to move forward. When he approached the ball of light blue light, he realized that it was a flame the size of a fingernail. When he walked in front of the light blue flame, the air flowed invisibly, causing the light blue flame to accelerate and rise into the sky. He raised his head and looked into the distance. He saw many light blue flames in the hazy gray fog, densely packed like fireflies on a summer night. "This is phosphorescence," Ji Tianqing murmured in a low voice, and a hint of seriousness flashed in his eyes. He knew very well that phosphorescence was what the common people called ghost fire. It only appeared in places where corpses were gathered. There were countless balls of light blue phosphorescence floating in the depths of the forest. Did it mean that there were countless corpses buried under the forest? Thinking of this, he could not help but purse his lips and shout in his heart, "I'm not even afraid of living people. Why should I be afraid of a pile of corpses?" Chapter 279. Ji Tianqing had just walked 100 steps when he heard a soft rustling sound behind him. The soft sound was like the sound of something nibbling on mulberry leaves, or like the sound of a breeze blowing the leaves. He immediately stopped and turned his head to look behind him. However, he saw that the forest behind him was empty. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Further away, it was shrouded in a hazy gray fog. He couldn't see clearly at all. He thought that he was too cautious. He was so tense that he was hallucinating, or he had misheard. He turned around and continued to walk deeper into the forest. However, he had only walked a few steps when he heard the soft rustling sound again. This time, he heard it clearly. It was definitely not a hallucination, nor was he mishearing. He turned his head and saw that the ground not far behind him seemed to have been blown by a breeze. Many withered and yellow leaves were gently rolling over. Within a radius of a few dozen meters, there were more than 20 places where the leaves were gradually bulging and rolling over. Looking at the situation, it seemed that something was trying to drill out from the ground. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and walked toward a big tree in front of him. Under the big tree, there was a pile of withered and yellow leaves rolling over and over, constantly parting to the sides. He was puzzled. He couldn't help but pull out the black dragon sword and use the tip of the sword to push the pile of leaves away, wanting to see what was going on. With a soft rustle, the leaves on the ground were pushed away, revealing an empty area the size of a wash basin and dark red soil. Ji Tianqing suddenly saw a pair of broad and thick skeletal hands stretching out from the soil. It was trying its best to stretch out. When he saw the pair of gray skeletal hands, his face immediately changed. He had a bad feeling in his heart. He quickly turned his head and looked around. He saw that among the rolling leaves around him, there were white bones sticking out. In just a few short breaths, the pair of skeletal hands in front of him had completely drilled out of the ground. Not only that, there was also a huge skull that had drilled out of the soil. Its eyes were flickering with ghostly fire, and it was looking up at him. This skull was very big. It didn't look like a human skull. It looked more like the skeleton of a demon beast. Damn it! There are indeed a lot of white bones buried underground. They're going to come out. Ji Tianqing let out a low growl filled with shock. He swung his sword and slashed at the skull under his feet. Boom! With a muffled sound, the black dragon sword shattered the skull, turning it into a pile of bone fragments that scattered on the withered leaves on the ground. Although the skull had been shattered, the corpse's movements were not affected at all. Both its palms and body were twisting left and right, speeding up its climb out of the ground. What the hell? Don't tell me he can't be killed. Ji Tianqing narrowed his eyes and cursed with a gloomy expression. He did not waste any time, nor did he care about the surrounding corpses that had crawled out from the ground. He quickened his pace and rushed into the depths of the forest. However, all the skeletons in the forest seemed to be alarmed. Light rustling noises came from all directions. One after another, pale gray skeletons pushed away the fallen leaves on the ground and struggled to crawl out. In the hazy gray fog, more and more pale blue flames appeared. They floated shakily and constantly approached him. When the pale blue flames came closer, Ji Tianqing saw clearly that they were not phosphorescent flames floating in the air, but the eyes of the skeletons. All kinds of white skeletons rushed over from all directions. They moved their skeletal feet and sped up towards him. With a glance, he could tell that only a small portion of the white skeletons belonged to human warriors. Most of them were huge demon beasts. Some of the skeletons were complete. He could vaguely tell what kind of demon beast they were before they were born. However, most of the skeletons were broken and incomplete. Some of them were missing arms and legs. Some of them did not even have a head. There were also some skeletons that only had half of their body left. They were still wriggling and crawling on the ground. Such a strange and terrifying scene made one's scalp tingle and a chill run down their spine. Ji Tianqing's face was solemn, but his mind was still calm. He immediately ran wildly in the forest. He constantly waved the black dragon sword and slashed out dazzling cold light, attacking the surrounding skeletons. Bang bang bang. Those clumsy skeletons were slashed by the violent sword light. Immediately, they made cracking sounds and collapsed into a large pile of bone fragments, scattering on the ground. The pale blue flames in their eyes immediately floated in the air, rising and rolling along with the energy. However, the skeletons were extremely strange. Even if they were smashed into pieces, the broken bones on the ground could still slowly wriggle, gathering together and piecing together a complete body. Ji Tianqing waved his sword and cut the skeletons into pieces one after another. He sped up and rushed into the depths of the forest. However, after a short while, a series of cracking sounds came from behind him. It was not the sound of bones breaking. It was the sound of bones rubbing against each other as a large group of skeletons ran wildly. He turned his head and looked back. He saw that in the dark forest, a dense group of skeletons had appeared. They were running with all their strength. Countless pairs of pale blue flames, like pairs of emotionless eyes, stared straight at him. The number of skeletons was so many that it was impossible to count them. They were so densely packed that he could not see the end of them. Most of the white skeletons were the corpses of human warriors. However, in the sea of dense skeletons, there were dozens of giant skeletons that were several meters tall, which were particularly eye-catching. They were the skeletons of giant demon beasts. Some of them looked like demon wolves, demon tigers, and violent bears. Some of them looked like elephants or giants. What was even more bizarre was that there were many flying bird skeletons flapping their white skeletal wings. They flew quickly in the air and rushed toward Ji Tianqing like sharp arrows. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing was surrounded by thousands of skeletons. He was surrounded in all directions, and the endless number of white skeletons immediately drowned his figure. At the moment of life and death, he still remained calm and composed. He waved the black dragon sword with all his strength, slashing out dazzling sword light and killing the white skeletons around him. Bang 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 bang. Caw caw caw. A series of muffled sounds exploded, reverberating through the forest. One white skeleton after another was cut into pieces by the sword light, turning into a pile of broken bones that scattered on the ground. Violent winds spread out, forming gusts of wind. The withered leaves on the ground were swept up and fluttered in the dusky sky. Ji Tianqing recklessly waved his sword and fiercely attacked, vowing to kill his way out of the sea of skeletons. He did his best to charge into the depths of the forest. Xian Yu flew out of the 100 treasures brocade pouch and fought side by side with him and the little black dragon. Chapter 280. For an entire hour, Ji Tianqing did not stop swinging his sword at all. He swung his sword with all his might, slashing out dense sword lights and shadows. God knows how many white skeletons were shattered by the sword lights. The skeletons of humans and ordinary demon beasts were often cut into pieces by his sword. However, the scattered bones on the ground would slowly wriggle and form new skeletons. The broken skeletal hands would quietly crawl to Ji Tianqing's side and viciously grab his legs. The skeletons that rolled on the ground would try their best to open their mouths and bite him with their white teeth. The skeletons in the forest of death seemed to be endowed with life and intelligence. They relentlessly besieged Ji Tianqing, wanting to turn him into a pile of skeletons. The gigantic skeletons that were several meters tall and as large as houses were all extremely strong and had strong defenses. They were very difficult to deal with. Their movements were extremely fast, and they could jump dozens of meters with a single leap. The flames in their eyes were also dark blue, making them even stranger and colder. Even though the black dragon sword was extremely sharp, it could not defeat the gigantic skeletons in one strike. It could only injure them. Ji Tianqing used 100% of his power and slashed out more than 30 times before he was able to cut a giant skeleton into pieces, leaving only broken bones on the ground. After an hour of desperate fighting, he finally broke out of the encirclement of the skeletons. 80% of the thousands of skeletons had been killed by him and Xian Yu. Amidst the fighting, he kept moving deeper into the forest and covered several hundred meters. And this area with a radius of a few hundred meters was already covered with endless broken bones, piling up into small mountains of white bones. Ji Tianqing was so tired that he was gasping for breath. He was both physically and mentally exhausted. He only wanted to find a place to hide and rest. However, he knew that this was only an extravagant hope. From the moment he stepped into the hidden fog mountain range, he was destined to be in danger. At this moment, the grayish-white broken bones on the ground kept wriggling and gathering together. They began to churn and surge. Crash! The sound of broken bones rubbing against each other was heard. An extremely gloomy and cold aura of death spread out in the forest. A thick gray fog appeared out of nowhere in the forest, covering the white bones within a radius of several hundred meters. Ji Tianqing saw with his own eyes that the bones on the ground seemed to be attracted by an invisible force and gathered together at a faster speed. Kacha kacha. The endless white bones piled up into a mountain of white bones, and it continued to grow and expand, emitting crisp sounds. In just 10 breaths of time, all the broken bones on the ground within a radius of several hundred meters had gathered together. A mountain of white bones more than 200 meters high appeared out of nowhere in the forest. The white bone mountain wriggled and shook for a while. Then, its appearance changed. It turned into a white bone giant that was more than 200 meters tall. The four limbs, torso, and head of this white bone giant were all formed from countless broken bones. Two balls of deep blue flames surged within its deeply sunken eye sockets. It looked down at Ji Tianqing from above, lifted its gigantic skeletal foot that was as big as a house, and chased after him. Its gigantic foot crushed more than a dozen black withered trees in a row, causing the ground to tremble violently, leaving behind huge footprints. Every step it took could cover a distance of 100 meters. In the blink of an eye, it caught up with Ji Tianqing, lifted its gigantic foot, and stomped down fiercely. Ji Tianqing realized that things were not going well. He immediately used shadowless steps and fled forward as fast as he could. "Old Ji! Get out of the way!" Qian Yu shouted anxiously. It quickly stretched out its claws to grab him and flew forward with him. Bang! Amidst the deafening noise, the white bone giant's gigantic foot stomped on the ground, causing a muffled explosion. The fallen leaves and soil on the ground were shaken into the sky. A huge footprint was left on the dark red ground. It was at least 4 or 5 meters deep, like a huge pit. Qian Yu and Ji Tianqing were lucky enough to escape the disaster. They just brushed past the white bone giant's foot. If it had been a little slower, Ji Tianqing and it would have been trampled into meat paste. However, Ji Tianqing had just breathed a sigh of relief. Before he could speak, he saw the white bone giant open its mouth and spit out a blue flame. The dark blue flame formed a pillar of fire that was as thick as a bucket and as long as 10 meters. It fiercely blasted towards him. He knew that the dark blue flame was formed by the condensation of endless ghost fire. It was very mysterious and strange, and contained a terrifying power. If he was hit by the dark blue flame pillar, the consequences would be unimaginable. At the moment of life and death, he unleashed all the potential of his life and desperately fled forward. Boom! The dark blue flame pillar brushed past him and fiercely hit the ground, causing an earth-shattering explosion. In an instant, a huge pit with a radius of 20 meters was blasted into the ground. Mud and soil splashed everywhere. The withered leaves on the ground were hit by the dark blue flame and were instantly burned into nothingness. An incomparably violent shock wave erupted. Mixed with the dark blue flame, it turned into a monstrous wave of fire that fiercely hit Ji Tianqing and Qian Yu. The two of them were blown away on the spot and tumbled to the ground 100 steps away. Qian Yu let out a painful scream and struggled a few times before it got up. Just now, it had used its body to block the monstrous wave of fire for Ji Tianqing and suffered a large part of the power, so its injuries were more serious. The icy blue fur on its body was dyed with a layer of dead gray and became dim. Although it did not seem to be injured or bleeding on the surface. In fact, it had suffered internal injuries. Its body and soul were corroded by the dark blue flame, and its vitality was rapidly declining. Old Ji! Be careful of the dark blue soul fire. It will devour your lifespan. It roared weakly in a low voice, reminding Ji Tianqing to be on guard against the dark blue flame. Ji Tianqing's body was not injured, but his internal organs were injured by the violent shock wave. His qi and vital essence were not flowing smoothly. He got up from the ground, circulated his qi, and adjusted his qi for a while before returning to normal. Seeing that the fur on Qian Yu's back had turned gray and its breath was very weak, he asked worriedly, "Qian Yu, how are you? Can you still hold on?" Qian Yu nodded and replied telepathically, "I'm fine, I can still hold on." "Old Ji, this white bone monster is too strong. Don't expect to fight it head-on. Let's get out of here quickly." Ji Tianqing clenched the black dragon sword and glared coldly at the white bone giant. Then he ran forward with Qian Yu at full speed. The white bone giant immediately rushed forward and began to chase. It covered a distance of 100 meters in one step and caught up with Ji Tianqing and Qianyu. It opened its mouth again and spat out a dark blue flame pillar. Boom! With a deafening bang, a huge pit was blasted open in the ground again, and dust flew everywhere. Ji Tianqing and Qianyu were lucky enough to escape the flame pillar, but they were hit by the monstrous wave of fire and were sent flying again. Qianyu's injuries were even more serious. The fur on its back had turned gray and its eyes were dim. Ji Tianqing's body was also corroded by the dark blue flame. A layer of gray appeared on his face and neck. Chapter 281. Ji Tianqing finally felt what it felt like to have one's lifespan devoured. The blue soul fire invaded his body silently, but it made him feel cold all over as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Especially his soul, after being eroded by the blue soul fire, he only felt a bone-piercing chill. He could clearly feel that his vitality was rapidly draining away, and his body seemed to be getting older and decaying. Fortunately, he was still a teenager. After his lifespan was devoured, his appearance didn't change much. If he was a white-haired old man, he would not be far from death after having his lifespan devoured. Bleeding was not terrible. What was terrible was the blue soul fire, which was invisible and intangible, but could quietly take people's lives. Ji Tianqing was very afraid of the white bone giant, but he couldn't fight it head-on. He could only dodge its attacks and silently look for the white bone giant's weakness. Qianyu's injury was so serious that it was difficult for it to fly, let alone fight with the white bone giant. Therefore, Ji Tianqing put it into the 100 treasures brocade bag and let it recuperate and restore its vitality. He was alone with the white bone giant, running wildly in the withered forest. He used his shadowless steps to increase his speed to the limit. His figure flashed in the forest and passed through layers of fog. Bang! 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 The white bone giant chased after him. Its feet made a big pit in the ground, and the vibration shook the area for thousands of meters. It seemed to be completely enraged. It kept opening its big white mouth and spitting out blue soul fire. Boom! Boom! Dull loud sounds kept bursting out, echoing in the dark sky. The blue soul fire pillars blasted out huge pits in the forest, splashing dust into the sky, and not dissipating for a long time. The violent shock waves, along with the surging blue soul fire waves, swept in all directions. Ji Tianqing's figure was sometimes submerged in the blue soul fire, and sometimes brushed past the monstrous fire waves. The situation was very dangerous, as if he was dancing on the tip of a knife. In just 100 breaths' time, the white bone giant had chased him for more than 10 miles and blasted out 10 soul fire pillars. He was blown away several times by the shock waves, and his internal injuries were worsening. Blood flowed out of the corners of his mouth. However, these were only minor injuries. The more serious injury was that his vitality was being devoured by the blue soul fire, and his aura was getting weaker and weaker. His skin became gray and covered with a layer of death aura. Ji Tianqing didn't know how long he could hold on, and whether he could escape from this death forest alive. Before entering the hidden fog mountain range, he only was a dangerous place at every step, and only a few people could walk out alive. At this moment, he finally understood that the legends were not baseless. This dangerous place was even more terrifying than the rumors in the outside world. The blue soul fire from the white bone giant's eyes, but it's over 200 meters tall. I can't even hit its eyes. As he fled in a sorry state, avoiding the white bone giant's attacks, he anxiously tried to think of a way. I can't keep running away. Otherwise, I'll exhaust my life force sooner or later and die here. After a while, he was in a way. Gripping the black dragon sword tightly with both hands, he unleashed all of his power and fiercely slashed at the white bone giant's left foot. The white bone giant's feet were not far behind him, and one of its toes was almost as big as his. Bang! The 3-meter-long dazzling sword light, carrying the power to split the heavens and earth, fiercely slashed the white bone giant's left foot, exploding with a loud dull sound. The huge impact sent Ji Tianqing flying, and he fell more than 10 meters away. The white bone giant's left foot was cut in half, and countless broken bones flew out and scattered in all directions. Its body was too big, and its left foot was cut off. It could no longer support its balance. He staggered, and his tall body fell down. It was as if a mountain had collapsed, and he smashed into the ground. Boom! An earth-shattering sound exploded, reverberating throughout the forest. A huge crater was formed in the ground, and the ground was shaking violently. Ji Tianqing took this opportunity to perform his ultimate skill without hesitation. He activated 2 sword radiances and slashed at the white bone giant's eyes. Wind Thunder Strike. 2 dark golden sword radiances, one from the left and one from the right, attacked the white bone giant. The dazzling sword radiance mixed with the strong wind, forming a huge golden thunderbolt, and instantly struck its left eye. Boom! In the thunderous explosion, the white bone giant's left eye frame was shattered, and the blue flame in its eye became much dimmer. It was unable to let out a scream or roar. It struggled to get up and opened its mouth to spit out another blue pillar of fire. Ji Tianqing was already prepared for this. He had already retreated when it opened its mouth. Boom! The gigantic blue pillar of fire smashed into the ground, creating a trench that was hundreds of meters long. The violent energy mixed with the blue flame formed a monstrous fire wave, sweeping hundreds of meters of the ground. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, and a hint of doubt flashed in his eyes. What's going on? I've already injured its left eye. Why is the blue soul fire not weakened at all? Could it be that the source of the blue soul fire is not its eyes? Realizing this, Ji Tianqing stared at the white bone giant with sharp eyes, carefully looking for the source of the blue soul fire. All of a sudden, he discovered a trace of a clue. There were 3 balls of blue flames in the white bone giant's body. 2 of them were its eyes. Although mysterious and cold, they were not powerful enough. The 3rd ball of blue flame was located at its throat. It was bigger than its eyes and more breathtaking. So it's here. Ji Tianqing was immediately shocked, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He did not hesitate to activate a sword radiance and use his trump card. Red Dragon Flash. The 2-meter-long golden sword radiance, with golden flames rising, was like a golden dragon phantom. With the power to destroy everything, it fiercely hit the white bone giant's throat. Crack! With a crisp breaking sound, the white bone at the white bone giant's throat was shattered by the red dragon flash, and a huge hole appeared. The golden dragon-shaped sword radiance passed through the hole and instantly hit the most dazzling and mysterious ball of flame. Bang! The ball of flame and the sword radiance of the red dragon flash exploded at the same time, turning into a surging wave of flame that burst out in all directions. The area with a radius of hundreds of meters was immediately covered by a monstrous fire, and Ji Tianqing's figure was also drowned. After a long time, the blue fire waves dissipated, and the forest returned to calm. The white bone giant was still lying on the ground, and there was no movement. The ball of flame at its throat was defeated, and it lost its support. The blue flames in its eyes also quickly dimmed and extinguished. Chapter 282. The forest calmed down and returned to its previous deathly silence. Ji Tianqing leaned on the black dragon's sword and leaned against a withered tree with a pale face, panting violently. Seeing that the white bone giant that was as tall as a mountain finally fell apart and turned into a pile of broken bones, he heaved a sigh of relief. Just now, when he was chased by the white bone giant for a short quarter of an hour, it was definitely the most dangerous moment. Fortunately, he clenched his teeth and endured it. At the critical moment of life and death, he remained calm and found the white bone giant's weakness. Only then could he defeat it and escape danger. Ji Tianqing leaned against the withered tree and panted for a while. He quickly took out healing pills from his interspatial ring and took them to heal the injuries of his internal organs. As for his lifespan that was devoured by the blue soul fire, it could not be healed or restored. At this time, the broken bones that were piled up like a mountain wriggled and made crashing sounds. Many broken bones gathered together and seemed to be piecing together to form a giant skeleton. Ji Tianqing knew that he could not stay here for long and had to leave as soon as possible. Although the white bone giant had been defeated by him, this place was dangerous and strange, and it was likely that more dangers would appear. He endured his injuries and exhausted body and quickly left the land of death, walking into the depths of the forest. For the next 2 hours, the journey was very smooth. Ji Tianqing passed through the sparse withered forest and crossed dozens of miles of withered leaves before he finally walked out of the forest of death. When he left the forest of death and stepped on a dark green grassland, he stopped to rest. Previously in the forest of death, his eyes were full of dark brown withered trees, withered yellow leaves, and gray fog that filled the sky, as well as gray bones. In that area, the world seemed to have lost its color, leaving only gray and pale. Because of this, life was decaying and quickly heading toward death. Ji Tianqing finally escaped from the land of death. When he saw the grassland and forest beside him, he felt as if he had returned to the human world from hell. He greedily breathed in the air that contained the fragrance of grass and leaves. He took pills and circulated his martial arts to refine them, silently recovering his exhausted real core and replenishing his exhausted physical strength. The surroundings were unusually quiet, so he quickly calmed down and focused on circulating his martial arts to heal his injuries. Unknowingly, 4 hours had passed. Ji Tianqing's internal injuries had recovered by 80 to 90%, and his consumed true essence had also been replenished. His grayish-white skin gradually returned to normal, and so did his mental state. Thus, he got up and left the grassland, continuing to move forward. He crossed the thick grass that reached his knees and entered a dimly lit forest. As he walked through the forest, he mumbled to himself, according to the markings on the map, "I'll enter a sea of fire after passing through the forest of death." But we're surrounded by dense forests. How could there be a sea of fire? He was full of doubts, and his sharp eyes looked around. As time passed, he went deeper and deeper into the forest. Soon, he saw some clues. The ground of the forest was originally moist and covered with trees and shrubs. The branches and leaves were dense and dense. The forest in front of them became thinner and thinner, and the ground became drier and drier. Many of the trees and shrubs in the forest had become bare, and the tree trunks were faintly charred. Ji Tianqing frowned as he looked ahead. His gaze passed through the layers of branches, and vaguely saw a dark red flame. He immediately realized that the so-called sea of fire was very likely in front of him. 15 minutes later, he walked out of the forest and came to a spacious pile of rocks. He had to stop in his tracks. Only then did he realize that the pile of rocks was on the peak of a 1,000-foot-tall mountain. A few steps forward was a 1,000-foot-tall cliff. The cliff was straight and steep, and below the cliff was a boundless dark red sea. After careful inspection, he realized that the vast sea was actually formed by red magma. This was a sea of magma. Dark red flames rose from the surface of the magma. They kept on surging and dancing, and rose dozens of meters high. Even though he was standing at the edge of the cliff, which was 1,000 feet away from the sea of magma, he could still feel the heat. However, he could still feel the scorching heat waves blowing at his face. Wisps of dark red flames rose from the bottom of the cliff and danced in the air. So this is the sea of fire. Ji Tianqing muttered softly with a complicated expression. His gaze became very solemn. He tried his best to look ahead and saw many towering mountains standing in the sea of magma. Every mountain was 1,000 feet tall, and there was no grass on the surface. There were only dark brown rocks that were covered in a thick layer of volcanic ash. Thick smoke constantly rose from the peaks of those mountains. Occasionally, a few dazzling flames would float out. Ji Tianqing observed for a moment and recognized that those mountains were volcanoes. From the various signs, those volcanoes were mostly active and could erupt at any time. Looking at this scene, he could not help but frown and smile bitterly. I didn't expect the hidden fog mountain to be so dangerous and harsh. It's far beyond my imagination. I just escaped from the forest of death, and now I have to cross the sea of magma. How am I going to cross such a vast sea of magma? The mountain under his feet was a lone peak. There was only the cliff and the sea of magma in front of him. There was no other way. He had already passed through the forest of death and arrived here. He could not give up and turn back. Since he could not retreat, he could only advance. There was no other way around the sea of magma. He could only fly in the sky to cross the sea of magma. After making up his mind, he communicated with his mind and called out to Qian Yu in his 100 treasures silk pouch. Unfortunately, Qian Yu did not respond to him even after he called out a few times. He understood that Qian Yu's injuries must have been too severe, and his vitality had been greatly damaged. He was still in a deep sleep and recuperating. Qian Yu could not fly with him, so he could only place his hopes on the little black dragon. Little black dragon, how are you doing? Can you fly across the sea of magma? He held the black dragon's sword with both hands and asked with a solemn expression. The black dragon's sword trembled slightly before it flew into the air and shone with a dazzling cold light. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the black dragon's sword turned back into the little black dragon and revealed its huge dragon body. It circled around Ji Tianqing and slowly lowered its body. Ji Tianqing smiled and sat on the little black dragon's back. He said, "Let's go. Keep flying forward and cross the sea of magma." The little black dragon nodded and twisted its body to leave the cliff. It flew above the cliff and flew forward as fast as the wind. Ji Tianqing sat on the little black dragon's back and looked down at the sea of magma. He was secretly on his guard. Even though he was thousands of feet away from the sea of magma. Chapter 283. 10,000 feet above the sea of lava, the little black dragon was leisurely flying through the air. Flames were rising from the surface of the sea below, releasing waves of heat that filled the sky. The little black dragon was a frost serpent dragon and hated fire energy the most. As it flew through the waves of heat, its speed was greatly reduced. It had no choice but to release an icy aura to protect itself and Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was also sweating profusely from the heat, his face flushed red. When the little black dragon used its icy aura to envelop him, the invisible waves of heat were separated, and he felt much better. Unknowingly, 7 minutes passed. The little black dragon had flown 30 miles, but the sea of lava was still as vast as before. It was impossible to see the end. At this time, it was passing by a dark brown volcano that was 10,000 feet tall. Ji Tianqing tilted his head to observe the volcano, his expression turning grave. Thick smoke and wisps of flames were constantly rising from the mouth of the volcano. As he got closer, he could even hear the muffled rumbling coming from the mouth of the volcano. Halfway up the mountain, there were many cracks and holes from which crimson lava was constantly gushing out. The lava flowed along the walls of the volcano and into the sea of lava below. Could it be, this volcano is about to erupt? He tightly frowned, his heart filled with worry and anxiety. After all, the lava spewing out of the volcano when it erupted would be a world-destroying blow to him and the little black dragon. Little black dragon, increase your speed. Go a little faster. He patted the little black dragon's back and used his mind to urge it. The little black dragon immediately increased its speed, rushing forward with all its might. About a quarter of an hour later, it had flown more than 30 miles away and finally left the volcano behind. And at this time, that massive dark brown volcano finally erupted. Along with the deafening noises, dazzling flames suddenly spurted out from the crater of the volcano where the smoke was billowing. Within the flames was crimson lava, and around the flames was endless volcanic ash. In a flash, the entire volcano fiercely trembled, and the sea of lava within 50 miles began to churn. Dark red lava and volcanic ash soared into the sky like a mushroom cloud, covering the sky for dozens of miles. The sky above Ji Tianqing's head was covered by black ash, and the surrounding light also became gloomy. The power of a volcanic eruption is so terrifying. Don't tell me that we can't avoid it even though we're 30 miles away. He secretly clenched his fists, circulating his true essence at an extremely fast speed. A moment later, a scorching heat and shockwave came from behind him, instantly striking him and the little black dragon. Boom! There was a muffled thud as the little black dragon was sent tumbling through the air, almost knocked unconscious by the terrifying shockwave. It was severely injured on the spot, and its power was quickly fading away. It could not control its balance and could only be carried by the shock wave, falling into the magma sea ahead. An instant later, an incomparably scorching shockwave swept past it and Ji Tianqing, spreading even further away. The little black dragon, who had narrowly escaped death, endured the intense pain and injuries. He did his best to maintain his balance and prevent himself from falling. Ji Tianqing's clothes had already been charred by the scorching shockwave, and his internal organs had also been injured by the shock. But he clenched his teeth and silently placed his palms on the little black dragon's body, constantly pouring true essence into its body to help increase its strength. The little black dragon was still rapidly falling into the magma sea, getting closer and closer to the crimson surface. It struggled with all its might, doing its utmost to resist the force of the fall, wanting to fly back into the sky. It was only several hundred meters from the surface of the magma sea, about to plunge into it in the next moment. At this moment, the speed at which it was falling finally slowed. 300 meters above the surface of the magma sea, it finally stopped its fall and twisted its body to fly back into the sky. The scorching air and the wisps of flame floating in the air immediately singed Ji Tianqing's hair. But very quickly, the little black dragon carried him into the sky, far away from the magma sea. The scorching pain in his body vanished, and he inwardly sighed in relief, withdrawing his palms that had been imbued with true essence. But when he raised his head to look at the sky, he saw a vast expanse of volcanic ash pouring down. Not only was this dark brown volcanic ash mixed with large amounts of rock and magma, it was also terrifyingly hot. Alas, the little black dragon was heavily injured and had almost exhausted all its strength. Even though it saw the volcanic ash falling from the sky, it was powerless to escape. It opened its mouth and let out a dragon roar brimming with grief, indignation, and unwillingness, a hint of despair flashing through its eyes. At this moment of life and death, Ji Tianqing immediately placed his palms on its back, once more pouring true essence into its body. The little black dragon's body trembled as it was replenished with true essence, and it suddenly accelerated to the front. Thud-ish. Just when the volcanic ash was about to smash into it, it flew away like a bolt of lightning, narrowly avoiding this calamity. When it escaped the range of the volcanic ash, its surroundings suddenly became much brighter. President Ji Tian heaved a sigh of relief. His tense nerves finally relaxed. He turned to look behind him and saw a sight that he would never forget for the rest of his life. The black ash and magma that blotted out the sky poured into the magma ocean, splashing up huge waves of magma that were hundreds of meters high. Boom boom boom. A deafening sound reverberated in the air above the sea. The world was turbid, and everything within a radius of 100 li was covered in black ash. Other than scarlet flames and magma, nothing else could be seen. 10 seconds later, the magma and rock all fell into the sea of lava. The surface of the sea fiercely churned, creating massive waves 1,000 feet tall and bursting with flames. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but sigh in amazement at this astonishing sight. However, although this earth-shattering scene was spectacular, it was also extremely dangerous and destructive. Old G, let's get out of here. The little black dragon sent a telepathic message to him before accelerating forward. But at this moment, Ji Tianqing saw a dazzling flame fly out of the surging sea of lava behind him. Hua! This massive scarlet flame charged out of the sea of lava and lunged at the little black dragon like a bolt of lightning. Ji Tianqing froze for a moment, his eyes fixed on this scarlet flame in astonishment. That's a lava giant? He immediately saw that the crimson flame was a crimson giant that was 100 meters tall. This giant's body was condensed from dark red lava, and its appearance was extremely similar to a human's. It had 2 hands, 2 legs, a torso, and a head. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.